its entirety, but I want to make sure you're aware of it. Also, statement on videotaping of the public portion of today's Board of Education meetings, as well as public comment statement. So thank you very much for that. And then finally, I'd just like to sort of point out that there is no smoking and vaping policy on school grounds. So thank you for adhering to that. And just before we get started with our official part of the agenda, I would just like to ask everyone to stand and for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. So our first item tonight, before we get started, will be sort of a moment of silence to sort of honor a recent passing of one of our teachers. So I'd like to take a moment just to honor the memory of Miss Wanda Arango. We're deeply saddened by the passing of Miss Wanda Arango, an educator who dedicated over 37 remarkable years to the Marlboro Township Public Schools, beginning at Marlboro Middle School in 1981 and continuing her impactful work with 6th and 8th graders at Marlboro Middle School. Ms. Arango exemplified the very best qualities of an educator. Her passion for teaching Spanish and fostering collaboration and global awareness has inspired countless students. Ms. Arango is known for having a nurturing and engaging classroom where students thrived and learned, and what I love is about they also sang and danced. All right, Ms. Arango is known, her involvement in initiatives like the Community of Caring showcased her dedication to addressing issues with creativity and compassion. Her involvement, her legacy is a sincere care, high achievement, and joy. Her influence touched the lives of generations of students and families. As we honor her memory, we extend our heartfelt condolences as a board and as a town and as a public school to her family, including her husband, Alejandro, and her beloved children and grandchildren. May her dedication, warmth, and spirit continue to inspire all who knew her. Let's take a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to get started with our agenda. Let me start with Mr. Ballone. The next items on the agenda are actually, I think, yours, and that will be, the staff respect certificates as well as student recognition and respect certificates.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As we do each month, we recognize our staff members. Our board has made a commitment through board goals and the district as well to demonstrate a year of respect, and this is part of how we recognize that for this year as well. Just so you understand how staff members are nominated, we receive emails from parents, emails from other staff members. Anytime a staff member goes above and beyond his or her job duties, we do recognize them at each board meeting. So this evening we actually have 2 staff members, one of whom I don't believe was able to make it this evening, so we'll make sure that she receives her certificate. And I'm not sure if the other one is here, so I do see her. So the first one, who is present here tonight, is Miss Tracy Krakoff. Mrs. Krakoff is from Marlboro Middle School. Thank you, Mrs. Krakoff, for your efforts in going above and beyond, and also her colleague from Marlboro Middle School, who, again, as I said, was unable to make it this evening, Mrs. Erin Aludo. So let's congratulate her. Okay, now moving on to student recognition and respect certificates for those students involved as well. I believe Mr. Tagenhorst is here from Marlboro Middle School. He's the vice principal at Marlboro Middle School. Thank you for being here, Mr. Tagenhorst. If you want to just share a few words on why you're here representing Marlboro Middle School along with the Healthy Futures Club.
Hope everybody got their certificates. Piece of paper from Sid. A big thank you to Mr. Ballone, Ms. Gross, Board of Education, fellow administrators, parents, family, friends, and of course our wonderful students. My name is Eric Tagenhorst. I'm one of the vice principals over at Marlboro Middle School. I'm going to speak to you tonight on behalf of our principal, Mrs. Pat Nowacki, and our other vice principal, Mr. Jim McCann. We're going to speak about our blood drive and our Healthy Futures Club. Last year was our first blood drive. It was a big success. Enough blood was donated to save 180 lives. So that is a true testament to our Healthy Futures Club that was advised by Nurse Jenna Gricci, who's going to speak to you in a little bit, and Nurse Lauren Gabler, and of course our wonderful students. They started the Healthy Futures Club last year, and it continues this year with 15 members. The goal of the club is to teach kids how to help each other, teach them ways to keep the community healthy, and to teach them how to respond in emergency situations. This year our blood drive is, so mark your calendars, March 1st, 9 to 3. It's actually the same day as our school musical, which is Shrek. Always a great time. That's going to be 12 and 4, and 7 o'clock the night before. So come out on Saturday, see a great show, and donate blood for a great cause. Without further ado, I want to introduce Nurse Jenna Gricci, who's going to speak about the event and about the students involved. So thank you for coming, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I am Jenna Gricci, one of the advisors of the Healthy Futures Club and one of the nurses at Marlboro Middle. I am here today to discuss our blood drive for you. The students are going to show you a little presentation, and we hope to see you on March 1st at 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. for our second annual blood drive.
Marlboro Middle School Healthy Futures Club. The Healthy Futures Club is now in its second year at Marlboro Middle School. We've been busy this year. We learned the importance of an AED and how to use one if someone is in cardiac arrest. We had Marlboro EMS come out and show us around the ambulance and learned how to stop the bleed in case of a life-threatening bleeding emergency.
Last year, the Healthy Futures Club hosted a blood drive that collected 6 pints of blood, enough to save 180 lives. We are so proud of our results from last year that we are now looking forward to setting our goal even higher and are counting on support from the Marlboro community to help reach our goal.
Check out some highlights from last year's successful blood drive.
Why should you donate blood? One blood donation can save 3 lives. Blood donations are always needed since there is no lab-made substitute for human blood. Last year, all blood donors at our blood drive had the chance to win raffle prizes to local businesses who donated gift cards and baskets. This year, we are so thankful to local businesses who have again agreed to donate gift cards and baskets. Thank you in advance to Dussel's, Rucco's, The Gricci's, Leela's Head Spa, Crumble, Lola's, Fred and Murray's, Turning Point, and more to come. So in case saving lives isn't enough of a reason to donate blood, you can also win some awesome prizes at the same time. Please join us on Saturday, March 1st in the Marlboro Middle School main gym from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sign up online through the link or QR code on the flyer. Thank you in advance for helping to make this successful.
Now please take a moment to hear from the members of the Healthy Futures Club.
The Healthy Futures Club is proud to announce our second annual blood drive.
Every 2 seconds, someone in the U.S. needs blood. That's a constant and urgent need.
Unfortunately, less than 10% of eligible people donate, creating a gap that we're hoping to fill.
Your donation can make a real difference, directly impacting the lives of patients undergoing surgery, receiving cancer treatment, and recovering from accidents and traumatic injuries.
Each blood donation can save up to 3 lives.
We understand that some people may feel scared, but the process is safe, easy, and usually takes about an hour from start to finish.
We're counting on you.
Plus, as a thank you for your generosity, we'll have snacks, drinks, and exciting raffles for all of our donors.
We'll be set up and ready to receive donations on Saturday, March 1st from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the MMS main gym.
Make March 1st the day you save 3 lives.
We hope to see you there.
We encourage you.
And you.
And you.
And you.
And you.
And you.
And you. And you.
And you. And you. And you. And you.
And you.
To give the gift of life.
Donate blood.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. We hope to see you on March 1st. If you have any questions, you can email myself, Jenna Gricci, or Lauren Gabler at our middle school nurse emails. Thank you.
I'm going to read off the names of our Healthy Future Club members. Rylan Abbott. Layla Abdelkader. Loredana Anastasia. Luke Gallagher. Sid Gupta. Claire Hutchins. Izzy Kamle. Andrew Novi. Nicole Opsha. Michael Schwartz. Jacob Shrem. Thank you, everybody. If you'd like to take up pictures, come up now.
Thank you so much, and that congratulations to all our students. I just wanted to say thank you because I think the work that you're doing with your club and your fellow club mates or club members is so important. As a parent my daughter is actually a Marlboro volunteer EMT, and she started that in high school. So the work that you're doing is so important and so meaningful to what we do as parents and as citizens. So thank you so much. And thank you for reminding me and reminding all of us about how important it is to donate blood. I'm also the child of a parent who is a heart recipient. So I understand how important this is. So thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for reminding us. Thank you so much for championing the importance of this particular cause. And I will do my best to be there on March 1st because I think that it is important that we all do our best to support such an important thing. So thank you again for doing what you do. I'd like to suggest that we take a recess for 10 minutes. We give the parents a bit of a time to sort of, decide if they want to stay or if they want to go, but everyone can sort of mingle. So would anyone like to make a motion for a recess? Val, second. Sue, motion, all in favor? Anyone no? Any abstained? Thank you. We'll take a 10-minute recess. Agenda is artwork on display. Mr. Balone? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do a roll call first. Mr. Caravello?
Sure. Mrs. Balomo?
Here.
Mrs. Carrero?
Here.
Mr. Hyatt?
Here.
Mr. Lansky?
Here.
Mrs. Mendez?
Here.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes.
And Mr. Cohen?
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go on to the next item on the agenda. Artwork on display. Mr. Balone?
Thank you. The students of the David C. Abbott Early Learning Center, under the instruction of Caroline Bullock, have been hard at work creating eye-catching winter masterpieces. Pre-K students created snowy rainbow tree landscapes that beautifully showcase their knowledge of shapes and colors. They crafted 3 triangle trees using colorful tissue, paper, squares, and glue, and demonstrated their painting skills through dabbing and splatter techniques. Kindergarten students embrace their creativity by painting evergreen tree branches in a new and exciting way. Instead of traditional paintbrushes, students utilize pieces of cardboard and a stamping technique, resulting in beautifully textured branches and evergreen needles. To add a festive touch, the students use Q-tips dipped in red paint to create lovely red berries. We hope you enjoyed the artwork, which was on display as you entered the board meeting tonight, as we enjoyed creating it, and thank you for your continued support of our young artists.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. Announcements?
I don't have any.
I have just one announcement. I know everyone's very used to sort of having board committee reports. We just formed the committees, so we will commence with committee reports beginning with our next month's agenda. I do want to thank those members of the board who have graciously accepted some of the chair positions, so I'd just like to announce those. The advisory committee, I'm going to co-chair that with Ms. Mendez. Thank you very much for doing that. Buildings and Grounds, Ms. Balomo, thank you very much for doing that. Communications, Mr. Hyatt, he will be the chair. Thank you. Curriculum will be Dr. Miskowitz. Thank you very much. Policy, Aditi Gandhi will be chairing that. Safety and Security, Mr. Lolansky, thank you very much for continuing to do that. Special Education, Dr. Miskowitz, again, thank you for your expertise in that area. And those will be the committees that we will be doing immediately for this coming year. There is another committee that's actually by the board, that's a technology committee. I haven't seated that committee yet, but that will be my next level of work to do. So thank you very much. Also under announcements, there is this month of January is the New Jersey School Board Recognition Month. So I just want to say that this board recognizes that, and we will continue to recognize the New Jersey School Board month. We want to thank all of the past and current board members for the service that they provide to the education systems across the state, and as well as to our town here. This is incredible work that you do. It has inspired me to be part of this, and I think it's wonderful that we participate in this, and we also recognize the work of our current and past board members. So thank you very much for that. Okay, moving on to our agenda, school bus driver and building maintenance. Mr. Caravello?
Sure. All abstracts were run and all have privileges in good standing.
Thank you, Mr. Caravello. Okay, we're going to move on to our first set of public comments. So, Mr. Caravello, do we
Sure.
have?
I do not have anybody on my list, but if anybody would like to speak, just please come up and state your name and your address.
Good evening. Happy New Year. My name's Adam Pollock. I live on St. Lawrence Way in Marlboro. I have 2 daughters in the district. Firstly, I wanted to congratulate the new board members. Looking forward to seeing all of your contributions and holding everyone who ran accountable to their promises of focusing on education and what's in the best interest of our community. I know not everyone agrees on what's in the best interest of our community, but I'm excited for that debate, especially when it can be done in a civil way without everyone insulting each other. So I sent you all an email today about smartphones in the schools. As I discussed multiple times in meetings last year, I'm concerned about phones in the schools. I'm concerned about some of the outdated policies around phones, and I'm concerned about normalizing behavior that we know is detrimental to our students. I know everyone does not agree with me on this, and I know that this is a sensitive topic in the context of security within the schools as well, but all I am asking is that we open this up as a topic of discussion. Everyone agrees that there are detrimental aspects of children having access to smartphones and the internet in the context of mental health. In my opinion, the mental health crisis of all adolescent students is going to be one of the defining and most important topics we face over the next couple of years as parents and as people invested in the education of children. Please take this topic seriously, and please remember that this is a community action problem. We will not be able to change norms about smartphones individually. We need to do it as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollack. I appreciate it. We know that this is a very important topic that's going on not only here in Marlboro, but across the state, across the country. We appreciate that, and we appreciate your thoughts on it. And I'm sure the board will definitely want to think about this issue as we progress during the course of the year.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
And Mr. Pollack, I know there's just one question, so I just wanted clarity. I saw your email today. Just when, I know we've been talking about this, just to clarify, when you talk about the cell phone, I'd say ban, whatever you were saying, was your thought that the child wouldn't have the phone in school? Or was your thought, or did you get that far in it, or is it that they don't have access to it? I was just trying to get clarity on that.
Thank you for that question, Ms. Mendez. I don't know the answer to that. I do not know the answer, and I'd like to talk about it with everybody and figure that out. I am not advocating for a phone ban. I'm advocating for a debate about it, to think about what's in the best interest of the kids, about what we want our kids to be able to do to interact with each other, what teachers are saying about phones in schools. I think that's super important to get teachers' perspective. What the security policies are, how we handle communication about those things. Is it better for kids to be texting with their parents in an emergency instead of looking at people who are an authority figure and taking direction from them? I have an opinion on that, but I'd love to hear other people's opinions about that and the pros and cons of each of these things. And let's have an open dialogue about it, try to figure it out together. It's a new thing. No one had a supercomputer in their pocket until 2010, and it's only 2025, and now they have more access to anything than ever before. So I just think it's worth a serious conversation from this board. Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to come up?
Good evening, Robin Bornstein, Marlboro, New Jersey. Just one quick question, because I saw that ESY was listed on the agenda for a location change. I was just wondering if you could say why it was being changed from the Early Learning Center to Dugan. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think we're going to answer that when we do get to the actual item on the agenda. Thank you for answering that, and it's a good question, and I think it's one that needs to be explained. Anyone else? Okay, do we have a motion to close public comments? Ms. Mendez, thank you. Second? Mr. Lolansky, thank you. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Abstained? Thank you very much. We've closed public comments. All right, on to our next item on the agenda, communications. Mr. Ballone, any communications?
I have none.
Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda will be Superintendent's Report, HIB.
HIB report from the time period December 13th, 2024 through January 16th, 2025. There was one incident reported.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to just draw everyone's attention to the meeting dates for upcoming meetings of the board. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. That will be a workshop meeting. On Tuesday, February 25th, 2025, we will have a regular meeting. On March 11th, which is also a Tuesday, we'll have a workshop meeting. And on March 18th, which is also a Tuesday, we will have a regular meeting. Those are our next 4 meetings of the board. All right, moving along to approval of minutes. We'll have to entertain a motion. I had a change or an amendment that we need to make to the January 7th. I don't know if that has been carried, but there I found that there was a mistake on the January 7th reorg minutes that we just need to change. Do we do that now, or do we do it after the motion's been made?
I haven't been brought to the attention of any mistakes, so that would have to be emailed to me so the minutes can be revised. So you would just have to table these then.
Okay, so then I'm going to make a motion that we table January 7th minutes, and I will email you. But we can probably continue unless anyone has any other changes to the December 17th.
Can I ask a question? I don't have any changes, just if we're voting to table that one, what was the issue?
In the nominations for vice president, the comments that Mr. Hyatt gave in support of his nomination, the minutes read Mr. Cohen. So clearly, I did not give those comments, and I just think that the minutes have to reflect the accurate person who actually gave them.
So we can actually vote on those minutes, and I would just correct it.
Okay. As amended, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we'll move both, with the January 7th being as amended to reflect that the vice president's comments for nomination were from Mr. Hyatt and not from Mr. Cohen. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Val, thank you, from Ms. Mendez. Second? Dr. Miskowitz, thank you. I would also suggest that that since both myself and Ms. Carrera were not on the board for December 17th, that we abstain for that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so roll call, please.
Sure.
Sorry. Any other questions or comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Belomo?
Yes.
Mrs. Carrero?
Abstain.
So you can abstain from December 17th and vote yes for January 7th if you elect to.
Yes for January 7th, abstain for December 17th.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Alonsky?
Yes.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
And Mr. Cohen?
I abstain for the December 7th, the regular and executive, and I vote yes to the reorg for January 7th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Secretary of School Business Administrative Report.
Yep, so this is the submission for the monthly certification for the board secretary's report for the month ending in December, and also the payroll certification for the month ending in December.
Thank you very much. All right, next item on our agenda is going to be a presentation from the Marlboro Education Foundation. I'd like to welcome them to the meeting and offer them the opportunity to make a presentation. I'd like to preface this by saying that you have items on the agenda today from grants to the Marlboro Education Board has actually approved, so there's various contracts actually having this review. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. So I am Jen Salachi. I'm the president of the Marlboro Educational Foundation.
And yes, I'm Alicia Thor. I'm the treasurer of the MEF.
So we just wanted to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about ourselves and then talk about the grants. So next slide, please. Thank you. So a brief history of us, the Marlboro Educational Foundation. This year we're celebrating 25 years of progress. We are a 501c3. We were established in the year 2000, and our goal is to enhance the quality of education in the Marlboro schools. We hope to do that by promoting community participation in school programs. So far, in these 25 years, we've raised over $650,000 in grant fundraising. We've funded over 250 grants, and again, 25 years of support from all parents and everyone in the district. It's been wonderful. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about our grant process, and Alicia is going to tell you more about that.
Okay. Sure. So, I'm going to hold it. Okay, so this year we revamped things a little bit where we actually made the grant application digital. So the feedback I heard was that the teachers and staff really appreciate that rather than going back and forth with paper. So we did, as I said, a digital application. So the MTPS teachers were notified that the grant application period was open, and then they also got the date that it would be closing, and they applied online. Once that deadline happened, the MEF, we met as a whole group, and we reviewed all the grants, and we then took a vote on all of them. And we met for, close to 2.5 or 3 hours. Yeah, we really, dove deep into it. At that point, we said, what we wanted to approve, what we didn't want to approve. We voted on that. And then we met with Mr. Balone, and we shared that with him as well to make sure he was on board with everything that we were going to approve. Also making sure that, what we were approving is not something that can be funded by the school budget. So that's where we come in, right? We pick up things that the school budget cannot cover. So we want to make sure that it's not something that we're going to fund that the school can cover, making sure it was actually a need, and that maybe the teacher didn't already have that item or whatever it may be. Mr. Balone also took that back to the principals and staff just to check with them as well. Like one of the grants kind of fell under the special services area, so Mrs. Tyrone, was approached about that one. Once all that was settled, I worked with Chris Jelinski very much back and forth, and Mr. Carvalho, and we got the approved grants put on the BOE agenda, which you have in front of you today. Next slide, please. So for this grant period, well, first of all, let's just talk about the grants. I'm sorry. So there's 3 levels to the grants. We have the collaborative grant, the mini grant, and the school-wide grant. So the mini grant is intended for individual teacher staff usage up to $500, the collaborative grant up to $1,000 for multiple teachers and staff, and school-wide grant up to $1,500 intended for usage throughout the school. We received 24 grant applications. 11 of them we did approve. We did our best to make sure at least 1 grant was given to each school that applied. Just for reference, only 6 of the 8 schools applied. So you may notice that 2 schools are not on there. Not that we did not give it to them. They did not apply. We also did our best to spread the grants between the multiple subject matters. So making sure, some went to art, music, math, science, all the different areas. So the 11 grants that we approved came to a total of just over $11,000. Next slide, please. These are the grants. I won't spend time reading them because they are on the agenda for you. And for those at home, you can also view the agenda to get that information. But again, you can see that, at least each school of the 6 schools is represented. Some were the mini grants, some were the collaborative, some were the school-wide. Some are online programs, some are assemblies. Again, different areas like the cat genetics, that falls under like the biology, robotics, math science, living voices. So again, there's a little bit of different areas. Next slide, please. Just spotlighting one of the grants in particular, the Living Voices grant, and the teacher actually wrote us a nice thank you, which I will read, saying, "Thank you so much for approving our grant, Living Voices presentation, which is on Anne Frank and the Holocaust. We are so excited to hold this assembly for 5th graders year after year, thanks to the support of the MEF. It is such a wonderful program that aligns with our first trade book, Number and Stars." So again, this is picking up, as I said before, where the school budget wouldn't be paying for something like this, but it does tie into what they're learning in the curriculum. I'll pass this on to Jen.
So this is how you can support us. You can always meet us. We are always supporting the teachers and the students. Meet with us anytime. That is our email up on the board. It's marlboroeducationalfoundation@gmail.com. You can come and volunteer for us and then share your ideas. We are always up for new ideas, anytime. Next slide, please. And next, everyone's been waiting, our Wizards event. It is always amazing, and it's going to be April 2nd from 7 to 9 at the high school, Marlboro High School, and our tickets are going on sale on February 7th at 8 a.m. Put it in your calendar and get there quick, because they go quick. 8 a.m. on February 7th for the Wizards. And I believe that is it. Next slide just says thank you very much, and that is who we are. Any questions, again, please email us, marlboroeducationalfoundation@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Falaci and Ms. Thor. I actually just have a couple of quick questions, and maybe if you can't answer them right now, that's fine, but always send it to us by email. The 13 grants that were not approved, and thank you so much for the work you do, because quite frankly, it's incredible. $650,000 over 25 years with 250 plus programs funded, that is incredible work. So thank you for that. That's just wonderful. And I think it really puts things in perspective for me, and I think for many people here in Marlboro, what you do. The 13 that were not approved this year, I don't want to diminish that, but do you provide feedback back to those as to why they weren't approved, or so that they can make it better for next year if they want to resubmit?
That's okay. Yes. So after everything was finalized, before the board agenda came out, we did send a letter, a personal letter to each teacher, letting them know if they were approved or denied. And for the ones that were denied, we gave a brief description, but we did say, please feel free to reach out for further information, and many of them did. And we explained why, maybe it didn't meet the criteria for one reason or another, and encourage, them to, apply again next year. But we did, yes, provide a reason to everyone, so they'll understand.
Great, thank you. That's helpful, so that they can be better prepared for next year. And then I understand 6 out of the 8 schools actually submitted. Do we know why the other 2 schools may have not submitted any applications?
So we don't know exactly why, and again, I echo Mr. Cohen's sentiments. Thank you for the work you're doing and the partnership that we've fostered this year. I think it's been a wonderful partnership. I can only speculate on why the other 2 schools perhaps did not apply, and I know we've talked about this. We'd like to continue the messaging of the purpose of the MEF, right? We have a lot of new staff members, and our staff members are very busy, right, from their day-to-day teaching, supporting. Sometimes they just don't know what they don't know, right? So I think I'm certainly willing to help provide that messaging and getting it out there. Mrs. Thor, you mentioned very simply, the MEF fills the gap that the local budget cannot fill, and can provide unique, innovative opportunities for our students. So if there are innovative things that you wish you had in your classroom, if you're listening to this, the MEF is an avenue for that, provided that it meets their mission. So we can certainly help with that messaging and selling what you do. Quite frankly, I was a teacher here, and as a teacher, I had a hard time wrapping my head around what the MEF did, and had I known then what I know now, I would have applied. So I think there are many staff members who maybe fall into that category, and it will be our partnership to help our staff members understand the benefit that you can bring to the school district, and hopefully grow the number of grants and get people involved. So thank you.
Thank you. And I before I open it to sort of my fellow board members, I just want to end on 2 positive notes. And I think it's really exciting to hear that you've improved the process and made it more user-friendly by going digital. That's great to hear. And I was very excited about hearing about the collaborative process that you have. That it's not just sort of it's not just the MEF making these decisions in a vacuum. It is about the collaborative work that you're doing with the administration, and what you're doing, Mr. Ballone, with the principals as well, to sort of vet these things, to make sure that they're aligned with what you feel is right for the district or right for the school. So that, to me, is very comforting in knowing that this is a partnership. And I look forward to sort of seeing how that continues. So thank you very much.
you.
Let me just open it up and see if anyone of the fellow board members would like to sort of ask a question or have a comment.
I just
Dr.
want
Miskowitz?
to I just want to thank you for the work you do. I wasn't in Marlboro at the time, but I applied for grants through different districts and through education foundations, and I wouldn't have been able to do these things in my classroom without the help of people like you. So thank you so much for what you do. I'm sure that the teachers that have gotten the grants are thrilled that they get this extra money there, because you can't get it, we just can't do it. Well, so thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No? Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing this item as we move forward with our agenda.
Yes, thank you again so much for inviting us and for having us. We were really happy to present. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is going to be a presentation of the 23-24 school year audit. Mr. Carabello?
So I have with me Mr. Robert Mulligan, sorry.
Close enough.
Different Rob. With Holman, Friendly, and Allison to go over our school district audit for the 23-24 school year.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'd like to say you've saved the best for last, but I think the MEF members would agree. The kids always do the best, and I can never top them at any of these meetings I go to. So I'll do my best. I've got good news. So as Vinny said, my name is Robert Mulligan. I'm the audit manager from HFA. Within our audit report, we have 3 opinions that we give: our independent auditor's report, our report on internal controls, and then our independent auditor's report on controls and compliance for your state and federal programs. Happy to say all 3 of those are unmodified opinions, which is the best opinion that we can give. So in summary, a nice stamp of approval right there. For fund balance, that's the thing that most board members typically care about. The district has a total fund balance at the end of June 30th, 2024 of about $14.5 million. There's no real standard as to what a healthy fund balance is, but I would say it's about 15 to 30% of your operating budget is a pretty good spot to be. Happy to say you guys are right there, 15.3%. So very healthy fund balance. And doing really well there, and good reserves in both capital and maintenance, which I know from talking to Vinny that you guys have some projects that in future years that you're hoping to do, and you have some good reserves there for that. And the last thing I'll touch on, our food service. We have about $1.1 million of net position there at the end of the year. Another good operating year in food service. If you look at the audit, went down a little bit this year compared to the prior year. A lot of that is just due to funding that you've received in the past due to COVID that is now drying up. So you'll see that kind of year over year, a little bit of a decrease there, but overall, that's kind of across the board, all of our districts. And like I said, if I can answer any questions for anybody, happy to do so. If you have any questions after tonight, please, Vinny has my contact information, so please don't hesitate. And just one last thing, thank you to Vinny, thank you to Chris, to the entire board office, Superintendent Ballone, and of course the whole board for having us and for all of their help. It's a tedious process having auditors come and disrupt your daily life for a couple weeks, so we appreciate their patience. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mulligan.
Thank you, Rob.
I appreciate your report. It's always very comforting to sort of read a report that's from an auditor that says no material findings and no deficiencies. So I'm glad to see that. And congratulations to Mr. Caravello, Chris, for all the work you do, because that is not an easy achievement to get, and to get it multiple years in a row. It just shows that there's a really good team there, and it's comforting from a board perspective to know that we're in good shape. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I couldn't do it without my team, so a testament to them if they're watching. Hopefully you're not. But just congratulations all around to the business office and all of our departments that have to gather information for when Rob and his team come. So thank you.
Any questions from the board, from Mr. Mulligan? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, moving on with our agenda, we are at discussion number 2 for the school year budget. Mr. Caravello, you're on.
All right, good evening, everybody. I mean, the audience is as expected. We're going through the budget, we're going through the audit, so thank you for showing up and attending. Tonight is the second discussion for the budget. Tonight we're going to be going over transportation, technology, and security. Again, the way I do this is if you have any questions, because some of this terminology may be new or unfounded, so just jump in whenever you feel like it, and I will be happy to answer any of the questions you may have. So just what I'd like to start with is a timeline, just to give an overview of exactly, month by month, what we anticipate doing, what we have to do, the deadlines. So as you know, last month we gave a presentation, just basically a preliminary overview, just to start the 25-26 budget process. So in December, what we do is we go over our enrollment projections. We work with the principals, the superintendent, to figure out staffing needs, special ed department. We start beginning those budget discussions with principals. We start giving them basically their notices and their allotment based off of what we're projecting for enrollment. We start having budget discussions with the board. And then January, where we are now, we'll continue our budget discussions with administrators and the departments as the budgets come in. We may question some things, send them back, wait on some budgets. We have our budget meetings with our department heads. And then we start having individual department discussions here at the board meetings. Excuse me. February, we'll continue exactly what we do in January. Hopefully this time it'll be different because we'll get our state aid numbers. So we usually get our state aid numbers right around Valentine's Day. Really the pie is not complete until we at least receive what our state aid numbers are going to be, because if they are projected at what's expected, then we can build a budget based on what we project. If they change, then we may have to alternate some things in the budget. If it increases, that's great, because then it means that we may not have to cut as much as we anticipate cutting to build a balanced budget. So those numbers will come in. It's always like a guessing game. We're hoping to get them a little bit earlier, hopefully in the future when they figure out a new funding formula, but right now it's always around in February. March, so I believe March 19th is when the tentative budget has to be adopted by the board. Again, this is not a final budget. It's just a tentative budget where we have to come to an agreement on something to submit to the county for their review. Again, it has to be a balanced budget. Once the county reviews and sends their comments in, we correct it, and once we get county approval, we come back in April, May for the public hearing on the budget. The public hearing is the final budget approval, where I would present to the board. That is also your official public hearing, where the public is allowed to come up and ask questions about the budget before we vote on it. I got ahead of myself. So in March, there's a new thing called the Chapter 44 adjustment. Basically, this was put into effect with the new healthcare plans, EHP and Garden State Health Plan. What happens is Chapter 78 healthcare plans used to be a percentage of your premium based on the chart that has sunsetted, but we have actually negotiated off of it. Chapter 44 now is your new educator health plan, your Garden State Health Plan, that is a percentage of your salary. The state has been pushing this. What they do is they make us do a cost analysis to see if we're saving money based on people jumping into those plans compared to the old ones. The first 2 years, we actually had to appeal what they were trying to calculate, because we felt like their calculations were wrong. So I think at 1 year they were trying to take $800,000 away from us, and we actually got it down to $80,000. A year after that, I believe it was about 40-something thousand. And then last year there was nothing, because we weren't really generating a savings because of how much health benefits is starting to really skyrocket. So again, that's something we have to submit, and we could possibly anticipate what this is. Basically, they take a cut off of your tax levy. So say my tax levy is $10, they're going to say, no, it should be $8. And then therefore we have to work with $8 instead of the 10, and we have to appeal that and basically say, no, you're wrong, it should be 10 or 9.5 or whatever it should be, but hopefully we don't have to go through that again. So again, since 2018-19, we have lost over $3.7 million in state aid funding, and that's mainly due to the S2 cuts that again has sunset and is over with. That also includes Chapter 44 funding cuts, but it's really not as material as what we've lost through S2. So the state now only funds about 7.5% of your total operating budget on the revenue side. The rest comes from your local fair share, which is your taxpayers, and then you can sprinkle in a little tuition reimbursement or rental fees, but it's not material enough to make up the grand scheme of things of your entire budget. As a school district in New Jersey, we do have to manage increased costs everywhere, just like as we would do in life, in the caps of 2%, because that's all we're allowed to do for our tax levy. So just like expenses of your home have risen, they have risen here as well. Mainly the cost of health benefits, your supplies, your utilities. I think everybody has seen their utility bill go up, no different for school districts. General services, your maintenance, your transportation, and of course your special education tuition. They set their rates, we get those, and they're usually anywhere from 5 to 10% of increase from the prior year, and we're also paying prior tuition adjustments that they give us years later. So it's always a guessing game with them that are set by the state. Also, since 2018-19, medical benefits have increased substantially by, I want to say about $4.4 million. So it's about a 35% increase. So just take that into effect that we've lost $3.7 million through state aid, but at the same time, since that time period, we've increased $4.4 million in health benefits. And that is something, unless you cut staff members, you cannot cut benefits. And we don't like to cut staff members. In 24-25, the state did come out basically saying that they would give us a one-time infusion of asking the asking the taxpayers back for the funds that we lost in S2. Instead of it coming from the state, we would ask it from the local fair share. They were allowing you to go up to 9.9%. As a district, we felt we didn't need it. I did propose it to everyone in July, and the board came to a consensus that we did not want to proceed with that, so we did not elect to take it, which we were actually one of the only districts in the regional area that did not take it. Everybody else did. So this gets to just having a layer of overview of some of the things we're facing. One of the big challenges that we're still trying to accomplish is just HVAC for our schools. We've been on a 5-year plan since I've gotten here in February of 2020. We started this 5-year plan about 2021, 2022. We've actually accomplished 3 of our schools out of the 5 elementary schools with air conditioning. 1 is in progress, 2 have been completed. Some of the history about that is, so Dugan and DeFino were completed first. They were actually done through the use of the ESSER funds, where we can actually improve air quality and use them for one-time projects. So we utilized that. We utilized a grant from the SDA program, and we were actually able to fund a little bit more, half of that project out of those 2 grant opportunities, or those 2 federal funding opportunities, where the rest came from our reserves. That was a great way to kickstart this project, getting 2 of our largest elementary schools out of the way. Last year, in last year's budget, we actually did Marlboro Elementary. What we did there is we actually applied for a ROD grant through the SDA. I believe they funded about 40% of the project, and the rest came out of our reserves. So that's actually supposed to be starting this spring, hopefully with a start up for May or June. Really, it's just the lead times on supply chains that continue to be a problem. The last 2 schools are Robertsville and Asher. Now, we have basically 4 options of how we can accomplish this that I wanted to bring to the board tonight. Some of them are the most fiscally responsible, but they may not be the most entertaining, because I know this town has a history of referendums not passing, but we're going to try to change that, because I think it is a good way to use debt. It's a good way to use, be fiscally responsible and actually enhance the infrastructure of this district and continue on what our long-term plan is. So number 1, what we have is an option called the second question, similar to a referendum along the same grounds, but what would happen is we would pose a second question on the ballot in the election in November. What we would do is we would pose a second question basically to get partial funding for the project for Robertsville and Asher Elementary School for HVAC. What this would do is that this would be in the form of debt service aid, where we would actually be able to get the state to cover 40% of the project, which is $1.2 to $1.4 million. The total cost of the project we're anticipating is about $3 to $3.5 million for both schools. Now, the reason we would want to do this both at the same time is because, as you know, these two schools are right next to each other. So we spoke with our architect and engineer, and just the reason to do them together is just to have the same contractor and go out for the same procurement process for just basically one total project. If you do it two separate times, you're paying mobilization costs, you're paying different vendors. It could be an absolute mess, so you would want to try to make it consistent and also keep the cost as reduced as possible.
Vinny, before you move to each one, can we talk about it for a moment?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question on number one? If the money were to come from the capital reserve account for the remainder, right, I know some would be state funded, would we, I see that it says debt service aid, would we have to pay that back? And secondly, if we took from the capital reserve, would that take from something else? Or do we have that money allocated?
So I'll just skip down to, I'll go back to that option. They may not be in order, but.
That's fine.
As Mr. Mulligan pointed out, our reserves are in good shape. That's at the end of the 23-24 school year. We got a 24-25 budget approved where I think we took out about, it was a 1.1 million out of capital reserve to fund the one from RL. So you have to reduce that from what he's saying our reserves are, plus another 1.6 million on maintenance reserve to fund a bunch of projects that we have pretty much caught up on, like asphalt repairs. A lot of those things we've been funding a lot out of that the last 3 years to really catch up the repairs that really have not been able to be due the last maybe couple years before I was here. So to continue to ask me to continue to just deplete the reserves for this project is not the most responsible thing to do, because there are things that happen with 11 facilities that we have here that may require us to make an emergency maintenance reserve withdrawal, or to plan for in the future when it comes to capital reserving, or taking that money down. So I don't know if that's the most fiscally responsible option to do anymore. You could do that, but I can guarantee you it's going to take longer than 5 years to do, because we have to continue to build up our reserves while also making sure we build a healthy fund balance to navigate these costs without really changing the programs and the environment and the district we have here. Because again, costs are never going down, and they seem to be going up at a rapid pace, where hopefully there's an end in sight, but right now we just want to navigate that so we don't have to cut anything in the operating budget to squeeze things in that we may be able to do creatively somewhere else.
So just, I'm sorry, back to then, thank you for that. The 14.5 million that we were told was in the fund balance, is that where you're talking about this reserve would come from?
So your reserves
separate.
Are separate from your fund balance.
How much is in the capital reserve?
So I think right now there's about 3.3 million in capital reserve account, and what we're estimating is this project to be exactly that.
Okay, so then that's what you're saying, we would deplete it if we were to use that?
Correct.
And then the other question on that one is the debt service aid. I'm sorry, would that be something we'd have to pay back, or that's just in the form of state aid that we don't have to?
So that's in the form of aid, where you would get 40% funding. That would be called your debt service fund, your Fund 40. That would not go into your operating budget of Fund 10 when you're building your budget. That would be budgeted separately in Fund 40. So no, that would not be basically any more weight on the taxpayer. So you wouldn't have to request, additional funding for your operating budget to fund that project. That would be in the form of state aid. What you would be doing from the taxpayer side is you would actually be putting up the money you would be taking out of the reserves that you've accumulated over time to fund the portion of that project. The remaining 40% would come through debt service aid, which I believe is the SDA.
Thank you.
So to be clear, the 40% from the state would be aid to complete the project, but not aid we have to pay back.
Correct.
Okay. And then, and Jen, also just the question regarding the reserve. If we depleted the entire reserve to complete this project, what else does the reserve usually get used for that we would need to be aware of as a board we may not have the funds to do?
So we've actually been pretty good with catching up for our long-range facilities plan, but there are always, items on the horizon that may need be addressed quicker rather than later. Things like any different types of capital improvements that you want to make around the building. So it would be roofs, windows. Yeah, it would be like hot water heaters, boilers, chillers. A lot of that stuff was done through the ESIP program, but again, something can always happen where you have to be prepared for and be able to navigate, because without a functioning boiler, you can't have school, or without, hot water, you cannot have school. So those are always things that we've always been creative in navigating, but again, you never want to be in a position, and I've never been in a position 9 years as a BA wanting to deplete your reserves for one thing. Usually it's a culmination of things, just it's not so much a rainy day fund, but it's just to prepare for the future fund instead of just getting something that we all desire and want, if there's creative ways to try and get that.
And then just one other question, just so it's clear for all of us, especially for me as a new board member. How do we replenish our reserves?
So every year, as Mr. Mulligan stated, so when we have a fund balance or we have a surplus, usually when we have a surplus at the end of the current year's budget, he'll tell me what my surplus is. I will tell him how much I want to designate to each reserve account, and then the rest after that will go into your fund balance. You'll see every June we put on a resolution that basically says a not to exceed amount going into your reserves. Doesn't mean it has to be that amount, but it just, I can go up to that amount. So I think this year you saw not to exceed like 500,000 or $1 million. I probably didn't get to that because I remember we wanted to build our fund balances to be able to build a solid base for the budget that was coming, because we knew we were going to have to navigate increased costs. So that's how your reserves get put in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Another option is an equipment lease. You can do a 5-year payback with the district, but we would actually pay the full cost of that. But you would not have to pay it up front fully. You would be able to divide that over a 5-year period in your budget. So you would essentially take the total cost and budget $600,000 each year in your budget to pay for the project. So that is another option.
Sorry, I know I said this to prepare you. I'm going to ask questions on each bullet point. For number 2, does that mean that we would be able to proceed with the service like a loan and you pay it for 5 years, or do you have to wait a period of time?
For the purchase lease?
For number 2.
So you would actually go out to procurement for bid. You would do it in the form of a purchase lease. They'd give you the total bid amount, and what would happen is we would actually procure that, or we would actually divide that into 6 to 5 payments and pay it over a 5-year period.
And we would build that into the budget for over the 5-year period. We would see some sort of amount being paid back towards that, correct?
Correct. So say it was $3 million, we would budget $600,000 each year for a 5-year period.
Okay, and then on the first one, it says it would be done by the end approximately of 2026. When then would number 2 option approximately? Same time frame?
So number 2 is just if we did it completely out of the reserves. I don't think I would be able to do 2 and have it done by the end of 2026.
Okay.
I don't think that would be feasible. I think we would have to strongly consider just doing 1 rather than 2.
Thank you.
Just so you don't deplete your full reserves from one project.
Hey, man, and a lease, again, is going to be like any other lease. They're not giving us free stuff up front. You're going to pay over time. So
We're going to pay over time.
You're not going to pay the same amount of money. You're going to be paying more.
You're going to be paying interest over time.
Exactly. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Ramoski. I was going to ask the same question. So that $3 million project may actually be 3.25, maybe $250,000 interest over a 5-year period of time.
Correct.
Depends on what the financing deal is.
It's really your time value of money.
Yep.
And you'll definitely be paying more over a 5-year period. The last one is one that we learned about at our county meeting. We were also able to actually, listen to a presentation from them. We were hopeful about this one. We actually met with bond counsel that we're very familiar with, just to get their interest on basically where we stand and if this was a possibility. Monmouth County Improvement Authority was offering the form of basically like bonds or notes of which you can apply for capital projects in which they would fund. How this would work is you would actually submit a proposal, you would get the board to approve it, and you would get the township to approve it. And what would happen here is that this is almost like a way around having to go up to referendum for voter approval. Instead, you would just go to the board, to the town, and then to the Monmouth County Improvement Authority for approval. And then the county would also sign off on it if they want to fund the project. This would work similar to number 1, where they would actually fund 40% of the project and the rest would come from us. Since this has been an option, we have heard that they're really not keen on doing it this way anymore, and the county is trying to remove themselves from it and not sign off on it anymore, because they do feel like the politics involved in it is getting a little messy. Because again, you don't have to go off a referendum. We just have to go to the board, and we have to go to the township. But this was also another option that we saw, and we felt like it would be wise to present to the board as an option to try to finish these 2 projects. We do have a letter to the Monmouth County Improvement Authority, just as an FYI to see if it will be going out tomorrow, just as an FYI to see if they would even be interested in funding this project, or is it a dead end and do we need to be creative in a different way?
I know you're going to proceed, so thank you, first of all, for answering all these questions. You're wonderful always. When it comes to the 25 budget that we're going to be set to approve, what is the expectation then with these options? I know, I appreciate you presenting them. Is the thought as we're going through this that we have to make a selection to approve with this budget at the end in the next 2 months, that we have to talk through these?
Yeah, so I wanted to bring this up tonight because we haven't gone over the Building and Grounds Department budget. There's going to be a list of projects. So the three options that I see is that you can either, I would have to really think about putting off this project for a year to try to build your reserves for one more year, if that's the route we want to go, is that's completely funded out of reserves, because I don't think it would be sustainable to take more out of reserves this year when we've been doing it the last couple years. So that's your first option, where I think you would have to just put it off for a year, and both those schools would not get HVAC until later on down the road. Your second option is if the board can come to a consensus, we would start the process of going for a second question on the ballot. And you know what, if it passes, we would get the funding and try to complete the project. If it doesn't pass, then we would be back to option one, where we would have to figure out a different means of trying to get these projects approved and get them funded. And then your third option is really a purchase lease, if that was something that we wanted to explore or navigate.
If we went that route, you know, going for a referendum, how much do you think the taxes would go up for people?
I would have to calculate that for you. I don't have that information in front of me, but so you would have to be budgeting for a Fund 40. I don't anticipate much because the ratables and the assessed value continue to go up, so the tax rate itself will not be that high. We were also pretty low because we didn't go to the 9.9% as opposed to other districts around our area. So that was something we will be able to calculate for you in the next budget presentation if that was a serious option that we wanted to go with.
I hate having some kids have air conditioning and some kids not. I said that last year when we were planning. It just doesn't seem, for me, it doesn't seem fair. Why should some kids be hot and why should some kids
And I know
not
one of those schools, they house some of our most sensitive programs,
Yes,
so you would want to.
Right, and the staff too.
Yes,
Mhm.
everybody. It's hard. It's very challenging when you are in a classroom.
So I just
for
wanted to
children
gauge
and staff.
just see where the board was at and just present this to everybody and see where their interest was at with some of these options. I mean, I don't think option 4 is really going to be on the table, but it's something that we were exploring and we just wanted to let you know about. But if option 4 is not on the table, I'd be hard pressed not to recommend to try to at least go for a second question and get 40% funded for 2 schools rather than have to foot the whole entire 100% bill over the amount of time.
Mr. Caravella, just a quick question on that. I mean, I personally don't think we should take any options off the table until we know for sure which direction we're going to go to it. And I agree with Dr. Niskowitz that, you know, we should not have students in our district who are not able to benefit from the air conditioning, or even teachers in our district who are not able to benefit from air conditioning, especially as our summers or our school semesters are getting hotter and hotter. Right? If we chose, and I'm just curious, if we chose one option, let's say for instance the lease option, right, and we then found out that the Monmouth County Improvement Authority option is on the table for us, can we continue with the Monmouth County Authority option for that and use the funding to pay off the lease? So can we move forward with one and potentially get the funding through the other sources to pay off the lease if we did that, so that we're not stalling?
So I believe with the Monmouth County Improvement Authority, in order to get approved, I think you have to show proof of the funds for your portion of what you have to invest in. So if we don't show proof of the funds and we go through like a purchase leaf and get funds that way, I don't know if they'll approve it because we're getting funds from somewhere else. So I would have to really creatively look into that to see if that would even be an option. But I know one of the sticking points was that they want to basically, okay, I have 40%, I want you to bring what you have to the table and show me. We do have it in our reserves. but I don't know if they would need to see like it committed or designated for such purposes before they would sign off on such a project. We won't get the reserve, we won't get the funding through a purchase lease until we went through that avenue first.
So we definitely have more work to do with the Monmouth County Improvement Authority to find out what the parameters are, if they're willing to proceed, and how we can potentially use that.
Correct, and I'm hoping a letter will at least, warrant a response to tell us if we even stand in the same ballpark as getting something from them, or if they would even entertain what we're trying to do. If not, then it would really just be a purchase lease, fully funded through your reserves over the next 2 to 3 years. Even to the point where if you wanted us to start now, we would have to just maybe do a quarter of school or half a school, but we would not be able to do the full school in one budget.
So quick question. And just one other question, if you don't mind, and then other than these 4 options, have you done a scan of, let's say, other options like grants, like energy efficiency grants, things like that? Because, I mean, obviously, if we replace the old systems, or actually in this particular case, we're not replacing old systems, but obviously there may be opportunities for us to sort of look at grants. Has that been explored? Has that been scanned as far as what's available?
So we actually got lucky the last 3 years when we went through the avenue of the SDA grant, which was for like HVAC improvements. We got that the last 3 years, but I have not seen anything out there that they're offering it again. Because that is a quick infusion of funding where they give you 250,000 towards the project, which always helped. I think we applied for 2 to put towards Morel, so it was like an additional $250,000 that went towards it, which was helpful. But I have not seen anything like that coming down yet. I don't even see any offerings of more ROD grants, because that would be another area that we would look into. It's 40%. But last year was their first cycle, probably in about 10 years, and I have not seen another cycle or a refresh of them offering more.
Dr. Misquith? Can you use your microphone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. This might be for Mrs. Tyrone. Do we have any children in special ed that need air conditioning?
I can.
Because do you have that information?
I can answer that. So
Okay.
what happens is, if anybody has a medical need, we receive doctor's notes, and if they receive, say they need accommodations for a window unit, we put that in for them in that classroom, and then it follows the student for the life of their tenure here.
But we're wasting so much time getting the
Well, the window units itself are just, they're not efficient at all, and in the long run, we actually pay more in energy than if you were to put something in that might be more energy efficient.
That's sort of
I'll just comment that if we decide to go with a second question, that we just keep it to air conditioning, because one of the things in the past, is what is done is start with a second question, and but nice to have another new basketball court, it'd be nice to do the auditorium over. Just bullet point what we need and what we really need and what we want, and make that the second question, period. And I wouldn't.
And I agree with you, because the history of looking at what referendums have went out for, it started with something, and then it was always stuff that was added, like it was a shopping list. And I think if we are serious about committing just to these 2 things, then we just keep it at that.
and we might have more.
When do you think you'll hear back from the Improvement Authority?
I'm hoping soon. I'm going to send it out tomorrow, and then we'll follow up in a week or so. But I'm hoping at least by the next meeting, at least we have some indication if.
Can you tell them we have a meeting at a certain date and get it back to us by then?
Yeah, I mean, we can call them, say, hey, have you received my letter? Have you received my letter? And then we'll see.
Do your best. I get it.
Yeah.
Vinny, can we just ask, and I don't want to put any extra work on anybody, just for the next meeting, similar to what you've done before, is a cost comparison of what some of the options are. If you're ruling any out, though I agree with Mr. Cohen, I wouldn't rule any out till we know the costs and whatever it could be, but a cost comparison is helpful of that, and also if there's any implications to the taxpayers, just because I obviously always want to be cognizant of that and know that before I.
The cost comparison, you want to see like how much it would estimate to be a purchase lease compared to.
Yeah, like the 4 options, kind of like in a table, like you've done for us before, and then if there's any impact to obviously the community also, because I want to obviously be aware of that.
Okay, so I'll present these 4 options next time. So I'll try to get an estimate basically from. Is it ESC&J? A lot of them do purchase leases. I would just have to ask our architect where we could find an estimate for like a purchase lease. It would really just be based off the interest rate that they're giving out leases right now for like a mechanical equipment. And then The capital reserve one is just going to be whatever the architect estimates. That's going to be 100% of what that's going to cost us
And
through our
just,
reserves.
however you're going to lay it out, but kind of like, as I'm envisioning like a table, and then in one column to say where the funding would come from, right? So hypothetically, you said 40% would come from here. It would come from the district, and it would be this dollar amount, just so we knew what we were responsible for. Whatever you're going to do,
Yeah,
but something similar.
Option 2 and 3 would strictly be out of reserves or operating budget, and then option 1 or 4 will have that tax rate impact, which we would be able to show you, because it would be coming out of your Fund 40
Yeah.
debt service now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so actually, let's get on to the budgets. So the first one we want to just go over is the transportation budget. So this is just a breakdown of some of the high-level areas of the transportation budget. So you'll see the variances, whether it's increased or decreased. You have your joint agreements, which is basically your contracted services for your out-of-district placement, your special ed students. You have your bus leases. So again, the next slide goes into some of why the variances have went up. I'll just speak to them as I'm looking at them. The lease buses go up mainly because we did not budget for purchase leases of new buses, as we like to do a cycle, because we actually got them through stabilization aid the year prior, so we didn't need to budget for them. We were able to free that up in the operating budget. So we're going back to our cycle, and we're purchasing 5 buses and 2 wheelchair vans. And then what happens is the buses that can no longer be commissioned will be decommissioned, and I believe there's some actually on tonight for approval to actually sell.
So if you added an additional column to this for 23, 24, we would have seen the number to be higher in 23, 24 for bus leases?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because we were actually able to, I think, fund 2 cycles through the use of stabilization aid.
Thank you.
Gasoline and diesel has gone down. This is mainly due to, you'll see at the bottom, contracted services has gone up. This is really due to us not being able to find drivers. So we've had to contract more out, so therefore, in relation to gasoline and diesel go down. Maintenance and repairs slightly up due to the cost and services. Your aid in lieu is also up. Again, this is just an estimate. We do not have the final number of aid in lieu. We won't get that closer to the school year, but the payment has marginally gone up through the state. I think it's $1,165 per student now, where they actually get for aid in lieu for the year. We actually do that through a shared service with Frio Regional. They handle our aid in lieu, and they handle Manalapan's, they handle Coltex, they handle basically all the regional K through 8s. Your equipment, your miscellaneous expenses, that's basically like your cameras for your buses, that gets purchased in there, and then in maintenance repair is where we pay for the cameras to be installed, and the licensing, I believe, right? Okay. Non-public transportation is basically just your non-public transportation for your non-public students. We actually do that through MOESC, so we would also budget for that for the estimated increase. And then you have your total transportation budget. You see it's going up about $287,000, which is that is normal. We try to effectively manage what we do not need and what we do need. But historically, you'll see from prior presentations that that's normally where the number you want to be at when it comes to transportation budgeting and how much it goes up for, because there's only so much you can cut in there. So your joint agreements, that has decreased substantially. That is basically due to your out-of-district students. A lot of your high flyers, your 8th graders that really went to, that really cost the district a lot of money when it came to what schools they were going to, are now going to Frio Regional, so that has decreased substantially. And we should have a fewer amount of kids that will require that are out-of-district placements. Your aid in lieu, again, we just increased this based off of what we're estimating for students to be, so we have not seen from regional yet of how many students we have, but we go by the most recent one we have, and we estimate accordingly from that. Your contracted services, so again, this includes those 3 additional packages due to us not being able to find bus drivers, that we were forced to contract out some of the bus routes. So in relation to this increasing, your salaries for bus drivers decrease, and then if we are able to find drivers, we would just take the money from contracted services and bring it to salaries to basically even it out, balance it.
So I guess the question I have is, if we wanted, we were able to get to the point where contracted services was down to 0, how many bus drivers do we need to find and hire to bring that number down?
I believe we had about 7 vacancies. So you would need 7 drivers, and then that would decrease substantially and go back to the salary line.
Would that take away from the MOESC then contract? We wouldn't need to contract with them any longer?
Yeah, we would not.
Okay.
One of the things that I also wanted to propose regarding that, I don't believe it's for executives, so I'll just say it here, is that, so we have some money earmarked this year that we would like to, get the board to think over and maybe give us a consensus at the next meeting of proceeding, and that's to basically do like some of the districts have had success with this, like a bonus and a referral program for new drivers. So we would think about, possibly giving a $5,000 bonus to any new drivers that sign on, and a $2,500 bonus for any referrals from existing drivers. That's something we wanted to propose and just see how would that
And yeah, I
be
just
received.
tell you that in my business, that was very successful. We always had sign-on bonuses as well as referral bonuses. Found to be very successful, and you could cost you a lot less than that number up there.
Yeah, I think that's one way, an incentive to kickstart it. We do a lot of advertising. We've done it at Marlboro Day. We still can't seem to attract drivers, so we wanted to try something different, and hopefully that would be, a creative approach to try to, garner more interest and have more drivers, join our team.
I think I saw when you sent us notes, there would be, though, a time period, right, where they'd have to stay employed. I think you said 2-3 years or something.
2 years is usually the normal.
Before they'd have to pay back that sign-on bonus,
the
correct?
normal range. We would hash that all out when we were able to kickstart that, but that would be a modest approach, is 2 years
Mhm.
to
I
allow
agree.
them to stay, and then, we have to try something because what we're doing right now is not sustainable, and so we wanted to bring that to everybody's thoughts also.
I think I agree with you, Mr. Wolonsky, that I've seen it being very successful programs like this with referrals, and of course you do need to have some parameters around it to define how long someone stays or how long a referral employee will, when they get their referral bonus and things like that. So I think that's very effective tools to do this, and the cost savings is enormous to us for this. I guess the question I would have is there any other restriction that you're seeing? I mean, I've seen in the past that sometimes retired employees have restrictions on how much they can earn if they're working for the districts or working for the municipality. Are there any other restrictions that we're seeing that may interfere with us being able to look at people who are currently retired?
No. So usually I think you have to stay away at least 180 days once you retire with a pension before you can be looked at for new employment in a different role. They can always become a sub driver. Unfortunately, we just don't get a lot of sub drivers that sign on, new ones. Other restrictions that I can think of, they just have to really have a valid CDL. It has to be updated. Their criminal background check has to be re-archived or updated. They have to be in good standing with the DMV, their abstracts. But other than that, I don't see why there would be any restrictions of anybody who retired if they wanted to come back and drive for us, because we've had retired bus drivers that come back as subs sometimes. Same thing with attendants. So I don't think there would be that many. The state also allows you now to just have an S-type endorsement to drive small buses and vans. So you don't need actually a CDL. So that's another way you can be creative and try to free up CDL drivers for buses, but sometimes that's not the most safest approach because we have a standard here and we would rather have everybody have a CDL than just have some type of endorsement if you're driving our most intensive children.
Thank you.
Again, so your lease purchases, we went over that. It includes your buses and vans that we're budgeting, and then the gasoline and diesel, of course, decreases because unfortunately we have to budget for the increase in the contracted services.
Vinny, I have a question. How many, and this might not be it's not an important question, but how many females versus male bus drivers do we have?
I don't know. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Because what I was thinking is that, younger, what?
Yeah.
There's only like 20% female? Male, 20% male. Most of them are female. Because they could do it,
Yeah.
part-time, you know, that's the problem. They
Yeah,
don't
the
get
majority
any-
of our bus drivers are female, but we do
Yeah.
have some
You
male
do
drivers.
have- Yeah,
Yeah.
no, because we have to maybe focus on the clientele that we're looking for. Maybe more women get, you know, making them more aware of this kind of a position that's part-time that they could maybe do.
Yeah, and we've tried with the outreach at Marlboro Day,
Yeah.
the advertisements,
Yeah,
we've worked with the
and
township.
nobody came.
We've actually
pushed
been
it.
able to get a couple. It's sometimes we get people and they're not a good fit. They may have their CDL, but once they go through the interview process,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're just not a good fit. We've tried Indeed, we've tried a lot. But I think now it's an incentive time a little bit, and so hopefully that'll work. So the next budget is your technology budget. So you can see here, so I wrote some of this stuff down because I can't remember all of this lingo all the time. So your technology budget, you'll see again the variances. So like your software maintenance, that has increased. That's really a lot of stuff incorporated in there is your firewall renewal, your VMware support renewal, your virtual cloud backup renewal. So those are all things that we purchase and have to renew. So you'll see that's why that's increased substantially. Your equipment supplies. So this year it actually went down because there are no domain controllers included in there. So that's why that you see such a decrease in equipment and supplies. Your tech services has also went down. Last year we did a cyber assessment. This year it's usually we do that on a cycle. We do not do that every year. So this year you won't see that budgeted in there. And then your miscellaneous, that includes like your PD, your travel, your office supplies. Your equipment and supplies, that also includes like your Chromebook parts, your iPad parts, parts that they use to swap out for devices. And then you'll see your Chromebooks and laptops. Your Chromebooks and your laptops have decreased. Last year we budgeted for teaching devices. This year we actually had to take that money because we were not ready to proceed with devices. So we actually took that money and allotted it elsewhere through a transfer. So we're hoping by the end of the year with a surplus, we can get back on that and just, because it's about time for the cycle for the teachers to receive new devices. It's been 4 years. So we would look at doing that at the end of the year with some of the surplus we have. What you'll see is what we do every year is we budget for middle school Chromebooks. So I believe we budget for 8th grade Chromebooks, then everything trickles down to the lower grades. Some of the key things that are included in the technology budget. So again, we utilize our Category 2 E-rate funding, so we will be replacing a lot of the Aruba switches at the elementary schools. This is partially funded through E-rate. So we get, based on our free or reduced lunch allotment, a certain percentage funded by the federal government through the form of E-rate, and then the rest gets budgeted by us. Same thing how I was explaining with the 40%. Another thing is, we've been doing this since I've been here, is the wiring projects. All of our techs in-house do all of the wiring. So they've been running new Cat 6E wiring throughout all of the buildings. The last buildings that are remaining are memorial, transportation, and admin. So we budget for that accordingly as well. Your support renewal is up for your additional district firewall. I believe that is at one of the middle schools. So that is why that is approximately about $50,000. And then you have your middle school 6th grade Chromebooks and, again, the possible replacement of the teacher devices. That's not going to be included in the budget. I don't know if we would have any room for that, so we're really going to try to do that at the end of this year.
Can I ask a question on two questions? One is the continuation of the middle school 6th grade. I know when it starts in the middle school, they can pay a fee to take them home at night and so forth. But what does that actually mean, the continuation of their Chromebooks?
Just the continuation of the refresh. So,
of the refresh of
continuation
6th grade
refreshing of
Chromebooks.
devices.
Gotcha,
Because
gotcha.
each year we go out to bid for new Chromebooks, and then they start in the middle school level, and all the older ones start to trickle down. So it's just a continuation.
Right,
of what we're
recycle the 8th grade back to, and then they upgrade, got it. And then the replacement of teacher devices, because that's important, do you have a number?
Well, we originally budgeted for Chromebooks, but we felt like that's not going to really work for our staff. So they want, or we want for them to have laptops similar to what they have now. You know, unfortunately, it might be a little bit higher than what was budgeted, but that's something that we wanted to hold off on because we want to make sure we get the device that's going to be the most suitable for the classroom.
Can I go? I just have a question. So last year, Mr. Balone, you came up with, you want to start a technology plan. No, Brian and I, you talked to me about technology committee. You're going to get to that. But I'm a little concerned because I'm guessing you, Mr. Balone, and the rest of the staff, like Mr. Ennie, is this technology budget going to cover what you're going to ask for? Because you're going to drive that technology plan with however that looks, with the board members, with your recommendations of what you need in the district, and with the board members, correct? So I want to make sure that in this budget, we're looking forward to needing what you, if everything is here, fine. If you don't think it's here, now's the time to say something.
Thank you for that. So yes, the hardware that we're looking for is included here, and I would be remiss if I didn't share this. The refresh, as Vinny calls it, of the 6th grade Chromebooks is essential, because if you even pause for 1 year,
And that's happened before here.
which has happened before, it doesn't seem like a large impact now, but what happens is as the years progress, it compounds, and it puts us into situations where, and I'll just use one example. I'm not saying we buy Chromebooks for state testing, but just one example is the updates for those older Chromebooks are no longer supported by state testing, which requires us to shuffle Chromebooks around, especially at the elementary level, because those older ones get pushed down. So the 3rd grade may be testing for an entire month versus getting it done over the course of a week. So that was one adverse effect that actually did impact us, and we have finally climbed our way out of that hole. So refreshing Chromebooks in 6th grade is certainly essential. In my head, part of the technology plan, Mrs. Gross and I have, as you know, we started working on that last summer. A big portion of that includes artificial intelligence and what that's going to look like in our school district as that unfolds. But in terms of, to answer your question, the hardware, that is included. I don't foresee anything additional. I've been working also.
From the hardware perspective, not so much instructional, Mr. Ennie Tom actually puts together a 5-year tech plan too, to monitor all these things, to what we're going to go through for E-rate, to what we're going to be replacing, what's at its end of its useful life, so we can get ahead for it and budget it. And when you see like a decrease in a budget, don't let that alarm you as if we're taking it away. Because when I originally start these conversations, we are a zero-based budget district. We go by what we need for that current year. It doesn't mean we're taking anything away. It just means maybe something that was budgeted last year is not going to be budgeted this year because there's not a need or a use for it, such as maybe, the cybersecurity testing, or some renewals are on 2-year or 3-year, so it may not be budgeted for. But as far from a hardware perspective, we've done a pretty good job as utilizing our Category 2 funding through E-rate and being able to pick out what we want to work on based on the funding. And our E-rate consultant does all that procurement for us as well.
Could I just ask, just back to the needs of the staff, because I want to make sure that we hear that. I think you said something about I think it's the next slide, about they want to be able to use different devices. Can you just share that? Because I think it's important to hear how they could work more efficiently or better, or whatever their feedback was.
How they work now is, we've not had any complaints about how they work now. We just want to make sure we get them a device that's most suitable for what they currently have. Because what happened was, we looked at Chromebooks, and it was not measuring up to what we're used to them having, and we felt like it was actually going to diminish what they had in the classroom now currently. So we just want to be consistent with them and give them the device that they're
yeah, and
used to.
And that's important.
we have no desktops. We got rid of printers in the classrooms, desktops. So really, we want to give them an ultimate device that they can utilize, move around with, and Chromebooks were just not that, unfortunately.
Agreed. And then you would share the cost of what that would be and all of that in your plan, right? Because I think that's important, that they have what they need. And
yeah, so what's going to happen is whatever device we set up on, it's going to be similar to Chromebooks, where we're actually going to go out to RFP for it. So similar to how we do the Chromebook bid, we'll do a laptop bid for that as well, depending on what we're looking for. We'll spec it out, anything to or equivalent, and you'll be seeing a bid on there to approve.
one more thing. Cybersecurity. I know you said you're gonna take a hiatus this year, but cybersecurity, those guys on the other side, they don't take hiatuses. So what are we doing to make sure that we're keeping up to date on what we need to keep up to date on our side of cybersecurity?
So we renew all of our contracts in here, so all of our firewall
So
contracts.
what are we not doing then? You said we're not doing something this year.
Well, because we don't do it every year. So what we don't do every year is, it's just a third, well, last year we did a third-party cyber assessment. We don't do that every year. That's
Okay.
basically to test our internal controls.
Yeah, I would say that.
Other than that, we have preventative controls in place where we continue to monitor all that.
I would say that, we should probably have a conversation about cyber in exec, so that from a security perspective, because obviously we want to make sure that we're not creating any additional risk or vulnerabilities. So we should just have that conversation.
Yeah, I
in
mean,
exec.
yeah, I never try to go through the programs in detail, but just to give you a heads up on the renewals or what it actually.
And the other part I just want to I want to just piggyback off of Mr. Lulansky's question, which I think you've answered, but this, and you've answered as well. This is a budget that basically says this is where we're doing a zero-sum budget in the context. But what I think is not included in this is that if you, and this I think picks up on what you're asking, is where are you going to make, or how can you make investments in technology? Where would you be wanting to make investments in technology to grow either our academic use of it, or our administrative use of it, or even our goal to sort of improve the excellence of our district from a technology perspective, so that we're not just zero-sum fund budgeting, but we're also zero-sum fund budgeting with a view or a perspective of investment. So I think that would be very helpful for us as a board, so that we're thinking about this. We're thinking that there is an investment fund, and that investment part is going to be made toward technology, and this is how you plan to spend that technology, whether it be teacher laptops, which quite frankly I agree that laptops are much more powerful and much more substantial for teaching than Chromebooks. Chromebooks have tremendous amounts of limitations in the operating system and what you can do with it, all right? But also, where else would you make investments so that we can continue to grow as a district?
And I know in the last meeting, because that's another key point I think we talked about potentially licenses for AI, right, that I know we've talked about before. Putting some, not saying that we're going there, I'm just saying that we talked about it a variety of times, and I think that was part of your plan, right, to put that in somewhere in the budget in case we want to purchase, say, Gemini for the children, hypothetically again. I know we're far from, I'm just saying. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think, and those all get triggered with, with just an AI. I mean, let's face it, we also as a district need to think about what our policies are going to be around AI from an academic perspective and from a use perspective. So I do think that, these are things that we want to start planning for over the course of this year.
And I just want to attest that that sounds like it's more from the instructional IT side for instructional curriculum purposes, but from an infrastructure standpoint, we consistently always try to update and make sure that our buildings are equipped with the most advanced technology and are suitable for everything. And that's a testament to the technology department. Not many districts can say they do their own wiring in each building. A lot of them contract that out. So we try to do, through that angle, we try to always continuously update that.
Thank you.
Okay, the last one is school safety and security. So again, this budget has slightly went up. So you see it's went up a little bit over 10%. Your first one is your contracted services. That is basically your shared agreement with the township with your SROs and your class 3s. So that's the cost that we pay to the township for those services. Your repair and maintenance, your software contracts, your equipment and supplies. So your repair and maintenance are a lot to do with cameras, door controls, window film repairs. So a lot of those, any of those repairs that you would deem a security issue would be budgeted in there. Software and contracts, that includes your renewals for a lot of your services. So whether it be your camera services, your license renewals, your door control service contract, your security alarms, contracts. A lot of those things are incorporated into the software and the contracts, all the systems that we utilize to monitor all those items. Your equipment and supplies is the one that is up substantially, and that is due to us budgeting for basically a new camera server, which would come with new licenses. We actually had a demo with a company regarding basically new servers, new cloud-based servers for cameras. I don't want to get too much into detail, but the problem was the overall all-in cost was about $500,000 to upgrade the whole district. What we want to do creatively is, because there's a lot of grants out there that we feel like we're not going to qualify for, and they just don't offer a lot to cover what we need. So we're going to start budgeting, per school, just to try to get that update. And this would include a budget of one of those schools. I don't want to get into detail what school that is, but basically we would essentially budget for this and then start to shop for, new camera servers. And this will allow you the capabilities and a more enhanced version, just different features that we can go through at the security committee.
And I'm just going to keep this very simple, just to say, is anything related to lobby guard in here? I know we talked about that before.
Yeah, so that would be under your, again, that would be under your contracted services. So that would basically just be, so the equipment itself, we could go into the security committee and talk about, but
yeah,
it's really just updating the renewal and the licenses and working with the company to get the newest and the most latest services that they offer in the software. It's really on the software side, not so much the hardware side.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's actually a great cost savings for us, not being on the hardware side. Okay, so your repair and maintenance and your software contracts, it decreased slightly. That's due really just to the repairs going down, because a lot of the repairs are volatile, so we do a lot of the repairs when they come up as needed. A lot of the repairs were handled last year, so you don't have to budget as much in that area. Your equipment and supplies, your professional development, and your increase is basically just for $500, and that reflects like CPR training or anything that they need to have their security monitors handle. So basically anything regarding CPR, security supervisor goes out to conferences or PDs, safety specialist training. Basically a lot of that stuff is covered in there. Okay, so that is the three departments that I was going to present on. I think next time we are going to do special education and curriculum at the next meeting. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and then this will actually be posted on the website if anybody would like to view it. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Caravello, and thank you to our, to our board for being so engaging and asking the questions, because this is extremely important and extremely helpful to me, as this has been my first budget presentation. So thank you for the level of detail that you go into as you do these presentations. It's extremely valuable and important that everyone has sort of transparency into what you're thinking and what you're planning as a district. Any other questions for Mr. Caravello? No? Okay. Thank you. We are going to continue with our agenda. We are actually at the point which is financial and business operations matters. Ms. Mendez, would you mind?
Sure. The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. Number 1, transfers. 2, list of bills. 3, secretary monthly reconciliation reports. 4, travel. 5, harassment, intimidation, bullying, HIB report. 6, home instruction. 7, out-of-district placement for the remainder of the 24-25 school year. 8, 24-25 Uniform State Memorandum of Agreement. 9, audit report for the 23-24 school year. 10, donation from Marlboro Educational Foundation. 11, donation. 12, acknowledgement and approval to dispose of vehicles. 13, submission of a FY 2025 local recreation improvement grant. 14, state contract purchases. I so move.
Thank you. Second? Mr. Lulansky, thank you. Before we, any discussions?
So just to, sorry.
It's okay.
So there has to be a correction done for number, so number 6, home instruction. So the student number 297564. So the dates need to be amended from 1/13/25 to 1/31/25. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. And before we go to a vote on this as amended for item number 6, item number 4, which includes Ms. Mendez, Dr. Miskowitz, and Ms. Carrero, they should abstain from that. As to number 4, since they're on the agenda as it applies to themselves.
Yep.
Okay? Good. All right. Roll call.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Whoops. Yes on all except number 4. I'm
Just for
abstaining.
yourself, right?
Yes, yes, I'm abstaining just for myself.
Mrs. Palomo?
Yes.
Mrs. Carrero?
Yes to all except number 4 for myself.
Thank you. Mr. Hyatt?
Yes to all.
Mr. Alonsky?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes, all abstaining from number 4 for myself.
Thank you. And Mr. Cohen?
Yes. Okay, next item is curriculum matters. Dr. Miskowitz, would you mind?
Yes. The superintendent of schools submits the following resolution for approval, amended 2025 extended school year program location change. And I believe we were going to talk about that?
Let's move it in second.
Let's move it, and then we'll do it in discussion.
Okay. Okay. I so move.
Thank you. Second? Ms. Mendez, thank you. Discussions? Mr. Balone, I think the question that was posed earlier was why?
Yes, so as you see, item number 1 here has a location change for the extended school year program for this year, starting this summer on July 7th. And the reason for that is there is an increased number of classrooms needed for the program. And thank you, Mrs. Tyrone, and your team, Mrs. Mortar, for looking at that very carefully, right? And I know I pushed you on a few questions. A, why? B, why Dugan and not other places? So there are a lot of considerations that need to be taken into account. Bathrooms for students, especially our younger students, being able to get into the bathrooms without extensive additional equipment. So, you know, housing them at the middle school really, while could be done, and we have done it in years past, it just makes it more challenging. So Dugan has enough room. The Abbott Center does not have enough room for this summer, so that's why the change was made. Thank you.
Any other discussions on that? I just have a question as far as the change in location for the students. Will there be some form of, you know, communication, outreach, socialization for those students so that they understand that they're going from a place that they may be familiar with to a different location for the summer program?
Mrs. Tyrone, do you want to come up and speak to that?
Hello. Okay.
Hi there.
So it's not on the website yet because we weren't sure about the location. So once we have the location set, it will go up onto the website for the application for summer. So if a child is going to be receiving the ESY program, that's told to them in their IEP meeting. That's decided with their team. And then the parent then fills out the application whether or not the child will be attending the ESY program. So in that, it will be the Dugan location. Students come from all over the place. Normally during the school year, the only students who typically would stay in their home school are the preschoolers. because that is where our preschool program is housed. So depending on the student needs, sometimes we do social stories, sometimes we do transition plans. It really kind of depends specifically on the student and what their need would be for the ESY program. But we'll have pictures and we'll have things like that, more so for our younger students because that's the biggest change. But staff won't have a problem with I don't think, with the change.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I think that's important to the parents as well to understand that there's going to be a program or some process that you'll have to sort of familiarize them with it. Any other questions for this item? Mr. Caravello, roll call.
Mrs. Bellomo?
Yes.
Mrs. Carrero?
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lewandowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes.
And Mr. Cohen?
Yes. Personnel matters, Ms. Bellomo, would you mind?
The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval: 1, retirements; 2, resignation; 3, rescinded employment offer; 4, employment certificated staff; 5, employment instructional assistants; 6, employment bus driver; 7, employment head custodian; 8, employment mechanic; 9, transfer non-certificated staff; 10, stipends, maintenance worker; 11, curriculum leap nurse; 12, curriculum substitute leap nurse; 13, curriculum rise coach; 14, curriculum professional day presenters; 15, stipend non-certificated staff; 16, amended extracurricular activity advisors; 17, stipend mentor teachers; 18, student practicum; 19, substitute nurses; 20, substitute instructional assistant; 21, paid medical disability leave; 22, unpaid leave of absence; 23, resignation. I so move.
Thank you. Second, please. Dr. Miskowitz, thank you. Any discussions?
Sure, just another reading correction, number 15. So your non-certified staff. So on page 22, in the middle of the section, Gail Katz will be removed, and Ronnie Pole will be added. So that's R-O-N-I, Ronnie, Pole, P-O-L-A-Y.
Can you repeat the first name that you mentioned?
Sure. So Gail Katz.
Katz, thank you.
Page 22.
Yep. And that's being replaced with?
Ronnie, so R-O-N-I, Pole, P-O-L-A-Y.
Thank you. Same school. Any other discussions on this item? Mr. Malone?
Mr. Cohen, would you mind if I
Go right ahead.
mention something? So item number 19 for the board, just want to highlight that for all of you, and to also thank you for approving an increase in our substitute rate for our nurses. I know you also increased the long-term rate for our teachers, but item 19 is a direct result of your agreement to approve and increase those rates. So these people, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 brand new substitute nurses. So thank you for that.
I just want to say, to the prior board, thank you for having that, foresight and wisdom to sort of do this. This was extremely important, and you've actually seen the results of your work. So congratulations and thank you. Any other discussions on this item? Thank you. Mr. Caravello, would you do a roll call, please?
Mrs. Carrero?
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lewandowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Bellomo?
Yes.
And Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Before we go on to the next item, I just want to give Mr. Ballone an opportunity to sort of make some retirement announcements.
Thank you. I have 3 sets of retirement comments. The first one is for Elaine Hill. Elaine Hill has announced her intention to retire from the Marlboro Township School District after 25 years of service in education. She has served the students of Marlboro for 23 of those years, all of them being at Asher Holmes Elementary School. Elaine has worked with both students and staff throughout our district as not only an elementary school teacher, but also in the capacities of mentor facilitator, LEAP instructor, curriculum writer, and student teacher mentor. She has certainly left a lasting impression through her classroom instruction and collaboration with colleagues across the district. Elaine's dedication and talent have made her a respected member of our faculty. Mrs. Hill is known for her high expectations as a first grade teacher and for her ability to encourage her students to recognize their own strengths and talents during their time with her. Her students enter Asher as kindergarten babies right out of the ELC, but they leave her class as independent and self-assured learners ready for their next academic challenge. Mrs. Hill has called room 17 her home at Asher for 23 years. Yes, you heard that correctly. Room 17 at Asher has been Mrs. Hill's classroom for the entirety of her career here, even when she shined as a second grade teacher for a short blip. How will any of us walk by that corner room without catching a glimpse or hearing a snippet of her expert teaching? Asher will certainly never be the same, and neither will the district's energy bill. Elaine liked to keep that room hot, so while we are losing one of the absolute best in teaching, we are also gaining some energy savings for the district, Mr. Carabello. No longer will the main office or head custodian get a call sharing that her balmy 82-degree room is freezing. It's baffling that her first trip after retirement is going to be to Alaska. We were sure it would have been straight to the equator. On a serious note, the entire Asher community wishes Elaine well on this new journey, and we cannot wait to hear about her traveling adventures with her husband and her 2 sons and their families. Cheers, Mrs. Hill, to your health and happiness in retirement. We know that you will keep yourself busy with friends, traveling, and of course shopping. But we also want you to know that no matter what you are doing, you will always be a Danielson 4. That's on their evaluation rubric if you don't know. Thank you for the 25 years you have dedicated to education. You certainly leave behind a legacy of love, dedication, and professionalism. Asher Holmes is a better place because of you. Thank you.
Thank you. We hope that we will see pictures of Alaska.
Next are retirement comments for Gregory Kinishevsky. Mr. Kinishevsky was hired as a school bus driver in September of 2019. During his 6 years of service to the district, Mr. Kinishevsky has done an excellent job. Throughout his years of service, he has been conscientious and aware of the great responsibilities of his job. He proved to be a proficient and thorough in the performance of his duties year after year. Mr. Kinishevsky's commitment to the safety and well-being of the children in the district has made him an asset to the transportation department. We thank him for his dedication, reliability, and loyalty over the years. We hope that his retirement years are happy, healthy, and fulfilling. Mr. Kinishevsky will be missed by everyone in the transportation department. And finally, I have retirement comments for Sarika Vernikar. Sarika Vernikar joined the Marlboro team as an instructional assistant in 2002. Following her assignments at the Early Learning Center, Marl, and Dugan, she joined the middle school in 2013 as an instructional assistant for the autism program. Over the past 20 years, she has served the student population as a kind, warm, and supportive role model, encouraging them to do their best work and show kindness to each other. Sarika continues to establish positive, caring relationships with children and collegial relationships with her own colleagues. Sarika is looking forward to spending precious time with her mother in India. She will continue to pursue her hobbies, especially cooking, and spending lots of time with her husband, Ashok, and her sons, Rohan and Avinash. We want to congratulate Sarika on beginning her retirement in June and thank her for many years of devoted service to our staff and students.
Thank you to Elaine, Gregory, and Sharika for your service for so many years and for all the great work that you've done in supporting our schools, our students, our teachers, and our families. We wish you a lot of success in your retirement. Thank you, Mr. Bullen. So we're going to continue with our agenda. The next up is a presentation by our board attorney, Mr. Michael Gross, on school ethics and code of ethics.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Normally I could give this dissertation on the 10 Commandments. It would take several hours. I don't think we want to go through that this evening. So what I would like to do is just go through the 10 code of ethics that you have both in your agenda, and I have provided to you a separate copy straight out of the statutory provisions. The one thing I want you to notice right away is that you will see that this statute was adopted in the year 2001. You will also note there has not been a single amendment to that statute since 2001. So you're being asked to follow these codes of ethics, these 10 commandments, without having any change over the last 25 years, just about at this point, which is kind of ironic. And I was actually watching something the other day. And so in the year 2001, when this was adopted, we were just learning how to use iPods, not iPhones, not iPads, but iPods. So you can see that the change in technology over the last 25 years, the change in just about everything that we do in schools has changed so dramatically over 25 years. But yet the state legislature has decided in its infinite wisdom to keep this exactly the same as it was when it was adopted in 2001. And the reason I bring that to your attention is I don't think that's necessarily a horrible thing, but it just shows that you are the only elected officials in the state of New Jersey that have any codes of ethics that are written in statute, by the way. And it hasn't changed at all. So how we have to look at this is the way that we look at our Constitution that has been in effect since the founding of our United States back in 1776, and how our judges interpret statutes and constitutional law for constitutional amendments and the Bill of Rights that were adopted over almost 250 years ago now. They have to take those words and interpret them under new technology. Obviously, when the Constitution was written, we didn't have airplanes, we didn't have automobiles, we certainly didn't have social media, but yet the judges are asked to interpret those under those laws and those constitutional amendments that were adopted decades and centuries ago. So we have to look at that because that's what the School Ethics Commission does also. And in that same vein, I want you to also understand that the School Ethics Commission has gone back and forth multiple times on the same issue as to whether something is okay, not okay, sometimes not okay, because they're hamstrung also because they have to deal with this 2001 statute that has not been changed. So they change over time also. So you will see that there are sometimes decisions that over a 2 or 3 or 5 year period, they literally do a 180-degree turn with regard to the result from their decision based on the facts, but also based on the change in society for nothing, if nothing else. So we want to go through those, and what I'd like to do at best is to go through each one of them individually. Sometimes as part of your QSAC, you're supposed to go through this process, and that's why we're doing it here today. Normally you would each read one of them. When you have 9 members here, somebody would read one twice, and that would be the end of it, and you met your QSAC requirement. But I don't think that's a good way of doing it, because if you just read it, it just goes in one ear, out the other, and we're not really going to pick up on those nuances that are important here. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to read them out loud with your permission, and I would emphasize those words that I think are important so that it changes perhaps a meaning that you may not have ever thought about when you have read these over time, or for the new board members for your first time, and they may take on a different meaning and a different interpretation once I highlight those important words in some of these. Some of them are rather easy, some of them are simplistic and easy to understand. Other ones are pretty complicated, and you can see why the School Ethics Commission has a very big agenda every month, because there are some rather vague and quite expansive provisions here that people try to put hooks into and try to grab onto in order to find that there's a violation. So I'd like to go through those. One last point before I go through it with you. You might have a lot of questions, and what I would suggest is I'm giving you just a general overview this evening. The reason we're doing that is because of the CUSAC requirement. I know historically you've done this with your council in the past, but I will remind you that many times you're going to ask me my opinion on things or my interpretation on things. Those things are attorney-client privilege. When I give you my legal opinion on a specific issue, that should remain in executive session because it's my legal counsel to you. Tonight's presentation is a general term that you wouldn't find anyplace else. I'm not going to be giving any legal interpretations that would be specific to any one of your questions. Once you start asking me questions, that would then caution me to give you a response in public. We can give those responses in executive session. So that's how we kind of deal with those two problems that are important and sacred when it comes to my attorney-client privilege to you with regard to interpretation of the statute.
But still, just for my own knowledge for this exercise, we could still ask questions if we have any, understanding that you're not giving any legal advice, just from experience what you've seen happen.
Of course, yeah. But I just wanted to make sure that you're, like, if you start asking specific questions or nuances under this and it's going to come to a particular issue, we'll do that as my legal counsel to you, as the board counsel in closed session.
And what about the board members that aren't present? Are they just getting emailed a copy of this, and obviously they can ask questions?
Sure, of course, the same way, and they certainly have access to the presentation.
To the recording. Thank you.
Through the World Wide Web out there. Okay? Okay, so let's start, and as I said, the statute is 18812-24.1. It's been adopted as of 2001, and it says a school board member shall abide by the following code of ethics for school board members. Couple easy ones to start off. They start off with these softballs. I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to the schools. Now, that used to be really easy, and we ran into a little problem around COVID time when we were deciding whether we had all executive orders were constituted as laws and orders and regulations and rules, et cetera. And again, you can see how sometimes the interpretation can then be changed when we have this other issue, because you don't really see the word executive orders in that number one. But again, if we want to abide by the spirit of it, that means it's all rules, all laws, all regulations, all court orders pertaining to the schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through the legal and ethical procedures, meaning that we're supposed to enforce it. We may not like the laws, we may not like the regulations, we may not like the court orders. This district is under one right now, but we have to abide by those. We have to follow those, because that is number one on the hit parade. B is another easy one. I will make decisions in terms of educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing. You're all elected officials. You all are members of the community here, and you have been sent by your representatives to represent the board on those kinds of issues. And again, this is the general catch-all, that it's easy to understand that we're here for the good of the children, to make sure that we're here for the best welfare of those children. But you still have that flexibility and that public debate as to how you want to achieve those goals. But you're supposed to just seek and develop and maintain that the schools meet those individual student needs. Two easy ones right off the bat. And then they hit you with the big three. And the reason I call them the big three is under C, D, and E, they really mold into each other when you take a look at them and you read them separately. They really still say mostly the same thing. And you will find that most ethics charges that are filed or even advisory opinions that are sought. One footnote on that. Let me talk to you about a difference between an advisory opinion and a complaint. Obviously, anyone has the right to file a complaint with the School Ethics Commission against any school official. That complaint goes through the process of a filing, and then there's a response, and then there's a possibility of either the Ethics Commission making a determination or sending it to a hearing to an administrative law judge, which would then have a final decision by the School Ethics Commission. There are also something under the statute called an advisory opinion. And an advisory opinion is before something happens, and if you're contemplating doing something, either as a board or as individual board members, you can always request an advisory opinion from the School Ethics Commission before you do something that you're not sure you would be permitted to do or not do. And they are rather quick when it comes to providing those advisory opinions, because you're asking them, we're ready to do something. Am I able to do this? Or you're telling me that I shouldn't do it. And districts sometimes utilize that a lot. And I think it's always a good idea to remember that that's there. You could do it as an individual board member. You can do it collectively as a board. But those advisory opinions sometimes come in handy so as to avoid somebody filing an ethics complaint against you. If you think that what you're doing is okay, but you think that somebody might not think it's okay, before you do it, you can't do it after you do it, but before you do it, if you're contemplating doing something, if you think do I have a conflict of interest because of the following scenario, and you just ask them, because my mother-in-law's sister's cousin's aunt used to at one point have an interest in this company that has a bid in before the board. Am I allowed to vote on that? And they will try to get you a response beforehand. Now, that's an example that may have maybe more time sensitive, but you get the idea that if you know something in advance before you go ahead and do that, it's a good idea to either talk about it as a board, and you can send out an advisory request through our office or the administration, or you have every right to send it on your own. Just a good point of reference, because C, D, and E, as we go through it, you will see how complicated it could get and how you can start to get into that interpretation of the law situation where one lawyer can find it one way, one lawyer can find it another way, and a third lawyer can find it a third way. And that doesn't necessarily mean anybody's right or wrong, again, depending on the factual scenario, depending on the provision that you're referring to. It sometimes gets a little complicated and cumbersome. So let's go through that. But again, we're going to go through the general aspects of these. I will confine my board action, and the word action is what's important in that, your board action, to policy making, planning, and appraisal. I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. What does that really mean? Well, that means we work as a board. We don't work as individuals. We can't go out and do anything and have any board action without us doing it collectively with the 9 of us. 5 wins. That's how we do it. Sometimes 4 wins if there's only 7 of us here. If we have a 4-3 vote. There are certain votes that don't require 5 yes votes. But majority rules, and that just means we only are confined to our actions, to policy planning and appraisal, but even those policy, appraisal, and planning are confined to board action, and board action means as a collective group. We will help frame the policies, and only after the board, not just the individuals, not just the committee, but after the board has consulted with those affected by them. And what does that mean, affected by them? That means we deal with, the board deals with, not individual board members deal with, our stakeholders with things, with our administrators with things. And we would then go through our board attorney with things, our staff with things. These are all the different people who may be affected by the things that we are going to ultimately make an action on under C. And then we will take the appropriate action as a board, not as an individual, not as a committee, but as a board. And you'll see D pivots a little bit, but really stays on the same theme. I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members, and that's the important part of that sentence there, to see that they are well run. It doesn't say that you as an individual is going to make sure that the district is well run. It says along with my fellow board members. And you're supposed to confine your responsibility not to administer the schools. That's the administrator's jobs. It's your job just to make sure that the schools are run well. Again, makes sense, but you can see where we start to move into an area where people are going to claim that you're micromanaging, that you are not doing the things that the administrators are recommend. Now, we'll get to that point of what you don't have to follow everything that the administrators say or everything the administrators recommend. However, we're supposed to listen to them first, and then you make your decision based on what E and F are going to say. But let's go to E. I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education. Again, the same thing. It's not any individual, and will make no personal promises nor take any private actions, and this is the key part of this, that may compromise the board. You can't do anything that it doesn't have to compromise the board. It may compromise the board. So if you do something that could or would perhaps potentially put the board in jeopardy or compromise the board in any way, that's the violation that most people don't realize, that there doesn't have to necessarily be a consequence to the board. It just, if there would maybe be a consequence to the board as to what your private actions are, that's where you can run into problems. How do you run into problems by that? Personal versus board member. It's the analogy that I try to use all the time. We all wear several hats in life, right? The hat that you wear as a board member, and most of you know this, so even the new board members, I'm sure, have seen this around, but when you have your board member hat on, you got to let everybody know that I'm talking about this wearing my board member hat. You can't try to disguise yourself as somebody else and say, I'm doing this maybe as a board member, maybe not as a board member, I'm doing it as a private citizen. No, if you have your board member hat on, you got to let everybody know you have your hat on. How we do that when we do any letter to, again, laws change. Laws don't change, but the facts change and society changes. But we really could apply the law to the way that we used to. It used to be a letter to the editor, okay? So if you wrote a letter to the editor and you signed your name to it and you wrote on it, Michael Gross, member of the Board of Education, that was my disclaimer that I was able to do when I did a letter to the editor, because I'm telling everybody I'm a member of the Board of Education, and if I just said that, that means I'm speaking as a member of the Board of Education. Now, times have changed. Letters of the editor are as obsolete as the newspapers and the magazines we don't read anymore, but now we can post things on the internet, you can have a website, you can do all these different things that you do through social media. Disclaimers are important. Disclaimers you put on there to say that it's Michael Gross, member of the Board of Education, and if you want to put that Board of Education label on there, you're either going to have to say, I speak on behalf of the board, or I don't speak on behalf of the board, and you better be very clear and specific as to how you're disclaiming your membership, because if you just wrote Michael Gross and you didn't say member of the board, people know you're the member of the board. You still should disclaim yourself, because it's not like the old letters to the editor, because there's probably 1,000 other posts on the same site where people have already let everybody else know that you're a member of the board. So when you're posting something as just Joe citizen, but everybody knows who you are and you are a member of the board, you almost have an obligation to put on that post, I am speaking as a private citizen. I am not speaking as a member of the board, despite the fact that everybody else knows I'm a member of the board. Now, school boards has a very interesting disclaimer that they recommend, and I will share this with everybody, obviously, separately, but it's a good disclaimer to have and I apologize because I had it circled here, on social media, and it's a good, it's kind of cumbersome, but if you put it at the bottom of all your posts, school boards is saying that this is something that they find to be reasonable and acceptable from their standpoint, and that the School Ethics Commission would find it as well. And it says, the following statements are made in my capacity as a private citizen and not in my capacity as a board member. These statements are also not representative of the board or its individual members and solely represent my own personal opinions. I will share that with all of you. You will cut it, you will paste it, and you will put it on all your posts so that we will have our protections from anybody claiming that we are representing anybody but ourselves when we're putting these things on social media. Because we don't want to run into the ideas of C, D, or E, where people are telling us that we're not acting as a board, we're acting as an individual board member, violating either C, D, or E. Going back to the hat. So we have the hat as the board member, and you have it on. Now, the most important hat that all of you wear are parents' hats. Now, some of you have students in the district, some of you had students in the district, some of you may still have students who are coming into the district. That parent hat is always the paramount. I will never tell anybody, despite the ridiculous idea that you ran for a board of education, that you still should somehow shed that parent hat. That parent hat is paramount. But again, when you are wearing your parent hat, we got to make sure, we got to be clear, because if you're going into a parent-teacher conference and the teacher knows that you're a member of the Board of Education, we don't want to run afoul of C, D, or E, or even F at that point, because you're going in and meeting with a parent, with a teacher who knows that you are a member of the board. It's great to walk in and just say, I just want to make sure you understand I'm here just as Johnny's parent. I forget about everything you ever hear or know about me being on the Board of Education. I'm here as Johnny's parent, and that is paramount. And that's really all you really need to do. And it's good to also say it because it will make the employees of the district feel comfortable in meeting with you without having any reservation, or at least you're trying to make them feel as comfortable as possible. Because just put yourselves in the inverse position, and you could understand how that would be kind of troublesome for an employee. But you still have that right. It doesn't mean that because you're a board member you can't meet with the teacher. It doesn't mean you can't have a complaint about the teacher. It doesn't mean that you can't deal with that issue the same way that every other parent is permitted to deal with any issue. But you also have to follow it in the same course of action and the same chain of command that every other parent in the district needs to follow, meaning you don't get to just go to the superintendent and say, I got a problem with Johnny. You should be going to the teacher first, and the teacher goes to the principal, and the principal goes to the superintendent in that same way, because otherwise you would be running afoul of either C, D, or E, because you would actually be running into a problem because you're trying to undue influence on the superintendent as well, but you're also circumventing the chain of command. So this idea that you wear these multiple hats is something you always have to remember. Now, in this community, again, it goes to the issue I was referencing before, there may be other hats you wear. I mean, you may have a hat as a business person in the community. There may be certain things where you're going to be dealing with interactions as the community member, the business owner, a PTA person, a booster club, something of that sort. You have to remember that those hats that you wear are identified and identifiable as opposed to the board member that everybody identifies you as. So again, you got to, because if you're going in as a business, if you wanted to have a booth at Marlboro Day, but you're sitting at the booth with the Board of Education pin on your lapel and you're also dealing with it with your business at Marlboro Day, well, you can't really wear both of those hats or both of those pins. Make sure which pin you're wearing at each time. And so if you're at the booth for your business, there shouldn't be any board stuff by your booth. Same idea. Hat, pin, same idea. Again, I don't want to take too much of your time, but let's go. Because the next few are pretty easy and self-explanatory, but I always want to spend a lot of time on C, D, and E. F, I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interests or partisan political groups. Makes sense. I mean, everybody knows that's the rule, right? Here's the important part. Or to use the school for personal gain or for the gain of friends. Well, sure, we understand that. But what that means is I can't call the superintendent and ask him to do me a favor. I can't call the superintendent and say, you know, I got a friend who is looking for a job. I can't call the superintendent and say, I want to have, my sister-in-law is looking to do something. Can you even write a letter of recommendation? You really shouldn't put the superintendent in those kinds of positions, even though it's not monetary gain, but it's going to put him in a difficult situation, again, because you're his superior, and that's where you may run afoul of Section F. Section G. I will hold confidential. Oh, I want to say one other thing about that. Look, you guys are elected officials, and you're going to make decisions about things, and all these words make it sound like you really, what can I do? And what you really can do and you really should do at all times is you do what's right in your heart. What your decision is what comes from you. As long as that decision comes from you and doesn't come from anybody outside or any person who would have, where you surrender your independent judgment or you go deal with the decision because of the special interests or the partisan political groups, that's when you run afoul. But if you can in good conscience always say that this decision or this vote or this recommendation that I'm making is coming from me and my heart, and it's coming to the board, and we go through the right channels, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. So just keep that as the mantra most times. But you're allowed to listen to your constituents. You're allowed to hear your constituents. You were elected officials. So you're allowed to do these things. So don't be running away from your constituents because you're worried about partisan groups or political groups. You're allowed to listen to them. But your decision making is from you and your decision after you gather all your information, because that's part of your job. G. I will hold all matters pertaining to the schools which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. That first sentence is the Las Vegas rule. You know, what is said in executive session stays in executive session. Rather clear and easy to understand. The next sentence, why those two sentences are together, I don't know, because they are not really related to each other. In all other matters, first we talked about executive session, confidential issues. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and in concert with my fellow board members, you'll see that's again, we can't do anything as an individual, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its schools. Again, it goes back to the elected officials. You're supposed to interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community of your school. Who sent you here? What your beliefs were? What your agendas were when you came. You're allowed to have agendas when you get on the board. Now, they got to be agendas that stay within the parameters of the four corners of the 10 Commandments, but you're allowed to have issues that you want to press. You want to have, again, with public debate, not as an individual, not with breaking the chain of command, but going through the process of committee and board and discussion and vote. Those are the agendas that you're allowed to bring up if you want to bring those things up, if we follow the right order and how we go about trying to get those agendas passed officially and correctly. And that's really what the second part of G talks about, where you're also held to a higher standard, and you also have in your, and that's the second sentence in G, you're also held to a little bit of a higher standard than the regular citizen, because you're an elected official and because you have these statutes that other elected officials don't have. But in your social media policy, you would notice that it says, nothing in this policy prevents a Board of Education member from using social network. However, a board member must avoid conduct on social media that would violate the School Ethics Act, which includes the Code of Ethics. Board members shall be advised communication, publications et cetera. While this policy respects the right of board members to use social networks, board members shall recognize they are held to a higher standard than the general public with regard to standards of conduct and ethics. A board member's use of social networks shall not damage the reputation of the school district employees, students, or their families. Board members should exercise care in setting appropriate boundaries between their personal and public online behavior. Understanding what is private in the digital world often has a possibility of becoming public, even without their knowledge or consent. So you can see that you are held to a higher standard than anybody else who posts something. Why are you held to a higher standard? Because you took an oath here, and part of that oath is to abide by those 10 commandments, which means you got to abide by the 10 commandments, even though everybody else doesn't. Is it fair? Sometimes things aren't fair. But that's the second part of G, which really has nothing to do with the executive session Las Vegas rule. Moving on to the last three, which are pretty quick and easy. I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the chief school administrator. Clearly understood, meaning that, and we've had this discussion before new board members, superintendent has a statutory obligation to recommend employees for hire. Personnel matters are all at the recommendation of the superintendent by statute. You have every right as a board member to vote yes, to vote no, or to abstain. You don't have to just rubber stamp and vote yes every time the superintendent recommends somebody. What you can't do is say, I'm voting no, but I want to nominate Mr. Jones for that position. You can't do that. It has to come from the recommendation of the superintendent. It can't come from the board when it comes to personnel hiring. And that you would vote for the best qualified person, and if you think that that person is not the best qualified, you can vote no. Even if you know who the best qualified person is, or you think you know who the best qualified person is, you can't vote for that person until the superintendent recommends him or her. I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties. What does that mean? It means we shouldn't talk badly about our employees in public. There's a state law that basically prohibits us from saying bad things about our employees in public. If we want to say something bad about our employees, we're going to give them the appropriate rights notifications. We're going to talk about them in executive session if they want us to, or then we can talk about them in public if they want us to. But we can't do it without their consent, and that's really the simple part of I. And then, of course, the last one, number 10, is I will refer all complaints, and the word all is the word all. It doesn't say some, it doesn't say the ones I want to, it says all complaints to the chief administrative officer. So that means, again, if you take in conjunction G with all the C, Ds, and E's and F's that we talked about, that you're not an individual. Something comes to you. You're supposed to send it through the proper channels. We're supposed to deal with the chain of command. We're supposed to go to the superintendent with anything that we have that we think needs to be dealt with. We can't deal with it on our own in an attempt to resolve it. Because you could see it also says that I will act on the complaints at public meetings, shouldn't be having anything private, only after failure of an administrative solution. You take it to the superintendent, he or she is supposed to deal with it, that's their job. You take it to Vinny, he is supposed to take care of it. If he can't take care of it, not to your satisfaction, you're not going to deal with it as an individual, we're going to deal with it as a board in public. That's clearly what it says. It also means that when you have any complaint about anything, as an individual board member, you should always CC the board president and the superintendent, because those are the people, again, because as an individual board member, you don't have the authority to really do anything on your own. Board president gets involved. The board president has a little bit more flexibility and more authority to deal with issues because of your bylaws that hand the president a significant amount of authority when it comes to talking to me about an issue, because only the board president, under your policy, can talk to me without his consent. You can't talk to me. So you get it to him, he will then get it to the superintendent. They both get these emails. They then have the ability to farm it to the right area, deal with it. Again, if it's not to your satisfaction when all the dust is cleared, it says you're allowed at a public meeting. After a failure of an administrative solution to your problem, we bring it back here. If it's an executive session issue, we'll talk about it in there. If it's a public session issue, we'll talk about it out here. But that's the process that we're supposed to go through. And I did want to read one last part, because all of these things are just, again, statutes. The legislature makes decisions on the verbiage, but it really comes down to what one of the members of your public said before, and he's been saying it for a couple of meetings now. We just need to learn how to get along with each other and talk civil to each other, because a lot of times it's all in how the message is sent. If the message is sent, with guns and knives, people are going to put up their defenses and they're going to look for something in one of these 10 sections to try to nail you, right? I mean, it's just common sense. You have a public decorum policy. Your public decorum policy 164.4. I'm just going to read from some of it. Board members should be professional in dealings with school district staff members, community members attending board meetings, representatives from other federal, state, or local governmental organizations, constituents from other outside organizations, students, and any other representatives from organizations approaching the Marlboro Board of Education on school district matters. In addition, board members should maintain a proper decorum in dealing with fellow Board of Education members during board meetings and during other times serving in their role as a Board of Education member. A Board of Education member should be respectful of a fellow board member who expresses an opinion that may differ from their opinion. A board member should be courteous to fellow members by being polite and considerate in manner. Simple, common courtesy. You may get more with honey than with vinegar, right? We've heard all these expressions before. It works sometimes. And when it doesn't work, we have the democratic process that we deal with. But it's always good to try and start it off that way. And I think that's really what the Code of Ethics really talks about in theme is if you have the right to have your opinion, you have the right to disagree, and as long as you follow the proper channels and follow the organizational chart and don't do anything on your own that will bind or put the board in any jeopardy, you'll be fine if you do it from your heart. It's really what you have to follow. And I've talked enough, it's 9:45 to 10. Sorry. But again, if we have individual questions, I'll take them now. Specific questions, I will then answer as under attorney-client privilege in the exec session.
Any questions? No? Mr. Gross, thank you for reminding us all of what we signed up for and the rules that we should live by.
Yeah, and I wanted to sound more like a Dutch uncle than I did like a lawyer, because people don't listen to the lawyers. But you listen to your Dutch uncle.
Thank you. Okay, so moving along to our next section of the agenda, policy development and community relations matters. Ms. Carrera, would you mind?
So the liaison reports?
No,
what?
this is policy
Oh, I
development,
think I-
community relations. We start out with the
Sorry.
superintendent of schools submits the
Oh.
following resolution.
Sorry. Okay, so policy development and community relations matters. Sorry. Approval of the 2025 to 2026 school year calendar and approval of the amended 2024 to 2025 school year calendar.
So moved.
What is it?
Just say so moved.
I so move. I so move?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And number 1, right, for a code of ethics?
Oh, yes.
Can I have a second? Mendez, thank you. Any discussions? Roll call?
Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Palomo?
In discussion, can we talk about the calendar quickly and revisit some of the questions that were asked previously? Like an update on the voting in the schools as well as some of the other issues that were brought to fruition last meeting when we talked about the calendar.
So, just so I'm clear for my purposes, so in regard to the calendar, I think you're referring to as the election day, as far as moving of the voting locations?
Right.
Okay, so I understand that previous board under Ms. Mendez was reaching out to the town and to the county to seek some relief for the voting locations, and that has yet to be sort of responded to. Is that correct, from your previous emails?
Correct. I received one response who said that Mrs. Hanlon was not the person and that somebody else would respond to my email. I know I then forwarded it to you to say, how would you like to proceed? Do you want me to continue following up, or do you want to? And I don't know where you stand on that piece yet.
Yeah, no, and I think, as I mentioned to you at the last board meeting when we were going through the reorg, I'm a strong proponent for continuity. So I would definitely appreciate, given the fact that we made the initial outreach rather than confuse people with additional people, if you would continue that outreach, but copy me on that so that I'm aware of it. And then this way I can also engage if I need to engage. But I think it's important that there be some continuity, at least in the individual communications that you've done.
Sure, I can continue then. I know I sent an email, so I'll just continue then with whatever that was.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We were also I had mentioned in the last meeting, discussing Veterans Day off. Where did you land on that?
So in looking at our calendar, we did not include that, right? We don't include all of our federal holidays as a matter of practice. We look at other days to accommodate the needs of our specific community, and I know we've had specific community organizations reach out and ask us to consider, and I know under the prior board we did agree to that, and we kept those to remain the same. The bottom line is we have to have 180 days of student contact days in school. So any day that we add as a school closure, it just impacts the school calendar, whether it be adding another day in June and figuring out what that looks like. I know in planning with the extended school year program, we like to give our students and staff ample time at the end of the regular school year to at least give them about a week or so before ESY starts. We also have many of our students in the community who attend summer camps. So we really try to look at all angles. We consult with Freehold Regional. Although we don't perfectly align with them, we try to align where we can. So, could we include Veterans Day as a day off? We could. It just has adverse effects later on. What I'll say about Veterans Day specifically is many of our schools do a really good job on that day, and they bring veterans in, and it's recognized very well. I was at many of those assemblies this year, and although it is technically considered a school day, it's very beneficial to our students and our staff for the recognition of the sacrifices that our veterans have provided to our country, both past and present.
May I have,
I would like to respond to Doc after she does her thing.
Mrs. Blomo, I appreciate you focusing on the veterans, and I am the spouse of a combat veteran. And I have to tell you, my husband and all the men and women that I've seen at the schools on Veterans Day, they are beaming. they love being honored by going to the schools. I hope that we can, ask veterans that, like, I find out from my grandchildren, if there's a program, and then you get an invitation, you have to sign up and so forth. I'd like to maybe in the future notify the senior citizens that are in the town or the, veterans organizations so that they can get an invitation to these different, concerts that they put on, singing. But I have to tell you, my husband and the other gentleman that I've been sitting with, they are beaming. They are absolutely beaming when they leave these things, that they feel that they've been honored. And then you see all of them going over to Applebee's for free lunch, because it really is special for them. So, and I do appreciate you, bringing this to our attention. But I can say that it's been, they are very happy to be there and celebrate. They feel that they are being celebrated.
I agree. Which school did they attend for the celebrations?
I've been to Abbott and to Morel.
Okay, so there's veterans that are invited to our schools for assemblies with the children where they sing, aside from the presentation at Robertsville and Nashville. This goes on at every school, because we weren't made aware as board members that was going on. That's something that I would have liked to attend. So in the future, it would be nice to attend those if we are going to be in session for those days, because I wasn't even aware that they did that at
Well, I did not attend as a board member. I attended as
That's great.
a
I
spouse.
didn't know that was going on.
But thank you
Or
for
the public
thinking of
was
the veterans.
invited.
I do appreciate that very much.
To echo Mr. Ballone's sentiment of the children do need, that we do need to meet that 180 days, I think that is even more reason to continue our efforts to remove voting from our schools and give the children the continuity of learning, of having that November break be extended. And I would hope that, Mr. Cohen, you would accept coming back and revisiting this if we were given the option to remove voting from schools and looking at some of those other days that we can give back to families, either for vacation time at the end of the year and shortening where the kids end school, or of course something like Veterans Day, because, well, I understand that some community members were invited, or however they found out about going to the schools. There also has been some expression that it would be nice to echo the other districts and have that day off to just recognize the service of our community members as veterans. So I would appreciate that if you're open to that.
I'm definitely open to it, and likewise, I share your sentiment as a son of a veteran. I equally think it's an extremely important holiday that we recognize, whether it be in school through celebration or by giving our students and our staff the time off to sort of, reflect on it as well. So as long, if it's something that we can achieve to find that day so that we don't impact it, then I would ask that Mr. Balone and the administration do come back and sort of offer that as an amended calendar for us in the future for us to consider as a board, since we all have to vote on that.
Thank you.
And the other thing I just want to add to your sentiment, and I appreciate you raising it because it's such an important part of the conversation, picking up on Mr. Gross's discussion about our ethics, we may want to explore ways and figure out how we consult with our community as to what their community preference would be in this particular case, so we get guidance that way. And we also need to understand the impact, other than just sort of if we said, let's extend the day by let's extend the school year by 1 day. What's that impact, not only to the parents who may have children who go through other programs outside of school, but also contractually and cost-wise for us to sort of keep the schools open for an extra day beyond sort of the standard school year. So those are just some things I just want to make sure that we look at this as a total picture, so that we understand it and we fully understand the impacts.
Yeah, just to clarify, I would never suggest adding an additional day to the end of the year. I was hoping that this could kind of substitute one of the 2 election days that we give our children off for their safety, which is paramount. But I would never I'm not proposing to add to the end of the school year.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification, and that's helpful for you when you're looking at that. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other further discussions on this topic, on this item?
Sure.
Roll call?
Yep, roll call vote. I'll restart. Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes?
Thank you.
I don't even know what we're voting on. Did you just-
1, 2, and 3 of policy.
Oh, what?
The code of
Okay.
ethics, the draft agenda, the draft,
Okay, then yes,
school calendar,
yes.
and the school
Thank
calendar.
you. Mrs. Belomo?
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lalansky?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
Mrs. Carrero?
Yes.
And Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to suggest, given the hour, that we make a slight adjustment to our agenda. I would like to suggest that we move public comments up to be the next item, and welcome people who are actually either on the
Sure.
list or anyone who wants to speak.
Sure.
And then we can continue with the last parts of our agenda.
Yeah, not a problem. So I have on my list Ms. Leanna Vitale.
Hi, thank you. I just had a few questions regarding topics that you mentioned before. I know you mentioned like the bus drivers and the issue of not having like enough bus drivers. So I was wondering, I have a couple questions also. So I was wondering first, are they receiving proper benefits? That includes like health insurance and the pension for them to be drawn to the position. Furthermore, I also was wondering like, how have the special needs children been affected by the bus driver shortage? Because I know with special needs children in particular, it's great for them to see like a familiar face often, and it could be discouraged when not met with that. And then another thing would be just what is done with the Chromebooks when they're no longer fit like for use for students. I was wondering, like, do they get thrown away or they get donated? So those are just some of the questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are great questions, and I appreciate that. Mr. Carabello, can you?
Yeah, so
wanna
if so I can answer some of those now. Some of those, if you want to just leave your email address, I can get back to you with some of those responses. So for the drivers, we do offer, they are a pensionable position. The benefits, they get a cost up to certain benefits. So I believe, I don't know, I think the amount is in the contract, but it's about $18,500 that they get towards benefits. So a plan that of their choosing, then they pay the difference if it costs more. For the special needs question, those are more joint agreements. So any out of district placements, we do have contracted routes. We have done that in the past. The increase in the routes that we're seeing are for general ed. That we've actually had to contract out and not have our own in-house drivers doing those runs for the district. So one of the things we always look at is the time for those routes for the special ed students. So we never want the time to be greater than it needs to be for them to get to their out-of-district placement. We always want it to be in a reasonable time frame. And then the Chromebooks, usually we trickle them down to the lower grades. So we actually put them in carts and we actually transfer them to elementary schools and other grades that utilize them. And then when they become at the end of their useful life where they're no longer supported by like Google or the license renewal, then we unfortunately have to dispose of them because they're no use to really anybody when it comes to that license not being supported by Google anymore. All right. Thank you for the questions.
I'm sorry, Mr. Carvalho, I don't know if I missed it or didn't hear it. Where were you from? Did you say where she was from?
I'm born and raised in Marlboro, Morganville part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Anyone else for public comments? Anyone else on the list? Pollock, welcome back.
Great meeting so far. Adam Pollock, St. Lawrence Way. I just want to say that I think it's wild to me that there's some schools in the town that don't have air conditioning, and I just want to say on behalf of a community member here that I definitely think that we should do something about that. It's like definitely, as Dr. Miskowitz said, not fair to some of the students and the teachers, and I definitely think we should make that as a priority. And I guess the reason I'm saying that, and this is more for the people listening, I guess also, is that like there's only 4 community members at this meeting right now, like that are sitting here besides the folks from the I think 4 who are not salaried here. And that's just like a bad showing from a town perspective of people who like care and are coming to the meetings and stuff. And I get it that it's like hard to come to these meetings and because people can watch it on YouTube also. But for the amount of talk about our school board, it's a little disheartening that people don't come to the meetings more. And I definitely think, just as someone who used to watch the meetings and now comes to the meetings, that you definitely miss something by not coming and you're not seeing people's interactions and facial expressions and things like that. So I think this is super important. We're spending a lot of time on this, a lot of talk in our town about the board, and I just think that more people should come. So as a person who is here, I just want to say that as a community member, it's important that we get HVAC and air conditioning in all of the schools. And I also think, just as I was talking about community action problems before, about the phones, this is something that we should be like evangelizing around and making sure that everybody in the town, even the schools that aren't affected, like rally around this topic and do something, and maybe even from an administration perspective. Because I just think about when we're actually, if we, option 1's the best option in my opinion, and I think we should do that. But I could see why people might vote against it, right? Because they think their taxes are going to go up and things like that. So it has to be, we have to like really explain it to people as to what's going on and why it's important. So I think that's a community action problem as well that we should all take on as community members and make sure the community understands the importance and why we should be doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. We sometimes lose sight of the fact that something like air conditioning should not be an option, right? Where in the past it was. And we hope as a board, I hope as a board, that we find a way to help make this happen. And I imagine that the rest of the board really does too. Any other comments or questions for the board? Motion to close public comments then? Mr. Hyatt, second. Ms. Mendez, all in favor? Opposed? So moved. Okay, we're going to go on to, we're going to try to wrap this up. We're up to liaison reports. So I know in the past you used to do the liaison reports followed by the school updates. In the interest of time, maybe we can do, if you're a board member and you're doing an external organization as well as the school, we can do them both together, just one after the other, if that's okay. So let's start with Freehold Regional High School district liaison. I think that is Ms. Seward, and she also has Abbott. Has anyone received Mrs. Seward's? You have. Would you mind reading that, Mr. Hyatt? Yes.
Yes, I don't mind. Yeah, Annette sent this to me today. She's traveling. So from Abbott for Mr. Perno, our character pillar of the month is responsibility. Students are learning to be responsible readers by participating in an incentive program. Students are asked to read or to be read to daily and log their time. As they reach certain milestones, they can receive a gift certificate for ice cream. The PTO update, the PTO is sponsoring an author visit later this month. They're all looking forward to learning about the creative process and how an idea becomes a book. And that's, I'm passing that on behalf of Mrs. Seward.
Thank you very much. I assume that we didn't have a Freehold Regional High School District update then?
Oh, no, we didn't. I didn't receive one.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So the next one on the agenda is Marlboro Education Foundation, and I believe that's Ms. Gandhi as well as Dugan. Does anyone have, Ms. Carrera then, please?
All right. So for the principal's report, as we welcome 2025, Dugan staff and students embrace the new year with Dragon Pals, a school program where the upper grade students paired with their younger peers for a read aloud of The Mitten Tree. This inspiring story also served as a springboard for a school-wide winter clothing drive. Dugan students collected hats, gloves, and scarves to donate to the New Brunswick School District, where one of our Dugan parents works, furthering the spirit of giving and community. Additionally, in early January, Mr. Pagliaro and Mr. Lavoie held school-wide assemblies to review our school expectations. They discussed possible consequences for the choices we make, including assigned and natural consequences, and emphasized the value of learning from past mistakes. Our youngest Dugan Dragons have recently completed their mathematics benchmark assessments, taking important steps in tracking their academic progress. As the final weeks of the marking period approach, signaling the halfway point of the school year, all of our students are working diligently to finish strong and set the stage for continued success. The Dugan PTO report. So the Dugan PTO Executive Board and its members continue to help make the schools a place full of kindness, creativity, fun, all while working closely with their phenomenal staff members. January was a blast for the Dugan Dragons. We were elated to donate hats, gloves, scarves, and winter accessories to No Limits Cafe. The yearbook committee has been busy with the cover design contest. We can't wait to see the designs and vote. We also had our first ever Light Up Dugan event. It was a hit. There were lots of smiles, hot cocoa, and even some snow. Next on the calendar is Dugan's Talent Show, which will be held on January 30th. Tickets and booster gifts are flying off the shelves. We are also gearing up for our Valentine's Day dance on February 7th. Registration is open. Don't forget that Dugan PTO just wrapped up a t-shirt sale to kick off the Battle of the Classes. This month's theme is Wear Your Heart on Your Sleeve.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add something, because I am in receipt of this report. It does seem like you misread the PTO report. It reads, first from Mr. Pagliaro, first of all, a huge thank you to Dugan PTO President Danielle Belomo for preparing this report for me. The Dugan PTO Executive Board and its members continue to help make our school a place full of kindness, creativity, and fun, all while working closely with our phenomenal staff members. I just wanted to add that in there, because you misread it.
Okay, this is what I received.
Thank you very much, Ms. Belomo, for adding that and clarifying. Okay, moving on to the next one, which is Marlboro Township Liaison, Mr. Lalansky, and would you also mind doing?
I have MMS.
MMS?
Yep, got it. From the township, summer camp registration opens for residents on February 5th at 7 p.m. Make sure your community pass account is accurate before registration opens. Commuter parking permit renewals are now open. If you're a current permit holder and have gotten an email reminder, the deadline to renew is on March 31st. The 2025 pet licensing portal is now open. Dogs and cats must be registered each calendar year. A reminder was sent in the mail for all those that had a pet registered last year. And the recycling calendar has been mailed to your homes. New this year is a free web-based app program called Recycling Coach. Find your zone, learn what is recycled, and where to set up reminders via text or email. And from MMS. Thank you to our PTO who provided ice cream treats to students and bundt cakes for the staff for a holiday treat before the winter break. The PTO is also promoting a Valentine's Day fundraiser. Send a sweet treat to your child this Valentine's Day. Your student will receive a voucher for free order of churros from the cafeteria as well as Airhead candy. The Valentine's Graham voucher will be handed out during first period on Friday, 2/14. Students will get their churro and Airhead in the cafeteria during lunch that day. Valentine Grams will just have a message that says, wishing you a sweet Valentine's Day. Students will not know who sent it unless the sender tells them. It will be a fun surprise. Orders can be placed at MMS PT Board website. 8th grade students will begin the process of scheduling their 9th grade classes at Colts Neck and Marlboro High Schools. We have already begun planning for graduation in June. We are entering playoff season for basketball. Good luck to all of our teams. The musical Shrek Junior is set for Friday, February 28th at 7 p.m. and Saturday, March 1st at 12 noon and 4 p.m. Tickets will be sold February 18th. It is a great show. We invite everybody to attend the performance. The PTO as well, attention parents and guardians of 8th graders. Please join us virtually on Tuesday, January 28th for our next meeting. If you have not done so already and would like to join the committee or have questions, please reach out to Marlboro Middle PTO at gmail.com. If you have an 8th grader, please join. We would love your input. Ongoing fundraisers include the birthday locograms, Route 9 shopping discount cards, and PTO membership. That's it. Got it.
Thank you, Mr. Lalansky.
You're welcome.
Monmouth County School Board Association and Asher. Mr. Hyatt, would you please?
Yes, I wasn't able to actually connect with the Monmouth County, but I do want to add, this isn't from them, but they have a webinar coming up on February 4th with Senator Gopal, who is the education chair. So, and I know we don't have a board meeting, so if anyone could listen in on that, it sounds pretty exciting.
That was February 4th?
February 4th.
Correct.
I think it's a Tuesday. It's on their website, so
Yeah.
if you go to Monmouth County School Board Association, I registered for it. I think
Yeah,
it starts
you
at
have to register for it.
6:37.
Yeah, you have to register.
Yeah. And then from Asher, I will try to read this with the enthusiasm that it was delivered to me because they are excited, but it's also 10 o'clock at night, so I'm going to try. 2025 has been busy so far, and we are loving it. We rang in the new year at Asher with an awesome magic show sponsored by our PTA, as well as an electrifying Grade 5 talent show. Congratulations to all our 5th graders who participated in the showcase. The acts were superb and reminded us of how talented our kids are. Wow. I'm trying. A shout out to the PTO for keeping the tradition alive and for the time and effort they put into the event to showcase our kids. Another big shout out to the Asher Homes 2025 Spelling Bee champ, Gian Saha, and I hope I said that correctly. The competition was fierce, but he came out victorious. We wish him luck as he moves into the next level of competition. We have no doubt he will represent Asher in the best way possible. I also hope he does move on. As we move into February, we look forward to a PTA pretzel sale, a Valentine's Day dance, another school store event, and our next chapter education pillar, kindness. Parents, please keep an eye out for our school and PTA emails, which will give more info about these events, including registration, spirit days, a community food drive, and chances to win prizes from random acts of kindness throughout the month. Finally, last but certainly not least, we are excited for Asher to join the February Board of Education meeting. Oh, so they will be here next month as we bring our 5th grade students ambassadors to showcase their leadership roles with the building and how they have helped to spread the word that Asher is a place of respect, responsibility, helpfulness, and honest leaders. Watch the BOE meeting next month, and to Mr. Pollock's point, please show up and welcome to the Asher kids. So they got a lot going on. It was exciting.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt, and I look forward to Asher's being here at next month's meeting. That's pretty cool. Next one is Dr. Miskowitz. Would you please do scope and Marlboro Elementary?
And before I do want to, I have a shout out to the middle school music department, because I was able to attend 2 of their shows, the 7th grade and the 6th grade music shows, and they were spectacular. And I just want to recognize Mrs. Dokas, who is in charge of the orchestra, Mrs. J, who does chorus, and Mrs. Bingham, who does the band. These kids will blow your minds every time I've gone to a show there, and it's so close. It's very close to me, so I just go around the corner, and I have a love for middle school because that's what I did most of my career in. So but when you hear these kids from Marlboro, they are second to none. They are with, really super good. And the teachers, just, they have such patience, and the kids love them so much. I think that's really important. Besides just learning, that these kids love their teachers so much that they, they're hanging on them as they're walking out. So I'm so impressed with these teachers, with the kids, So I just want to make sure that I got that in there.
Let me just add real quick, because I was the concert as
Oh,
well.
are you?
Yeah, at
Oh,
middle school.
what a
And the
surprise.
strings, those kids go from 0 to
Yes.
concert in a few months.
Yes.
Mrs. Dokas gets them at
Yes.
0. They have never touched a string instrument.
Yep.
And they're doing the concert.
Yep.
It's amazing.
She
You know,
is.
it's
They-
amazing.
they are
And
absolutely-
Mrs. J,
yeah.
at 6th grade concert, Mrs. J helped because Mrs. Bingham was out sick, and she was able to take care of the band as well. She stepped in and like a rock star and took care of the band. So they're just amazing. The whole thing
Yeah,
is just great.
they are fantastic.
Well, maybe we can convince them at some point in the future to come to a future board meeting.
That sounds like a good idea. That sounds like a
Thank you.
very good idea.
Scope
Okay.
and Marlboro.
Okay. For Scope, Scope would like to express sincere gratitude to all the special education and service providers for submitting thoughtful and innovative grant requests. The Scope Board is diligently working with the Special Services Administration to carefully evaluate each application. Recipients will be announced shortly. Stay tuned for exciting and inclusive spring events, including bagel making and walking for a worthy cause. To become a Scope member and enjoy the benefits, please visit our website at scopemarborough.ptboard.com. Thank you, Jenna, Jessica, Alicia, and Victoria. And now, thank you, Mr. Schatz and Mrs. Varga, for the update on the upcoming activities for Marlboro Elementary School. As January comes to a close and February begins being a short month, you might be thinking, what is happening in Marlboro schools? Well, the students at Morel will be busy and warm with their various activities. Turtley Awesome Positivity presents. All students will have the opportunity to purchase a positivity turtle to share with a special person at home. Student council members are working to facilitate the assembly of the turtles as well as assist creating the positive messages that will go along with them. All proceeds will be donated to the Marlboro Township Police Canine Unit, in particular for Canine Officer Bolo as a get-well present for his recent surgery. That is really sweet. Mrs. Vitz, is that how you pronounce her name? G-W-I-T-Z. Do you think I'd know how to say that? Vitz? Is that it? What? Gwitz. Mrs. Gwitz and Mrs. Pollock's class are working on a project titled the Cereal Box Domino Challenge to knock down hunger. Their goal is to collect enough cereal boxes to create a line of cereal box dominoes that will be lined up and knocked over. The class has set a goal to make the line stretch throughout the halls of the entire school. The boxes of cereal will then be donated to a local food pantry, which is a great idea. The PTO will be soon selling pizza kits from Pizza Pasta Factory. On February 7th, Morel will be celebrating winter with their winter dance. The theme is Snowflake Spectacular. February 20th is bingo night with an 80s theme. And during the week of February 24th to the 28th, the PTO will be hosting their exciting book fair. The book fair is always a big hit with the students. Stay warm, Marlboro.
Thank you. And CPAC and DeFino, Paloma?
Sure. Before I give these reports, I would like to say thank you to CPAG co-leaders Angie Colby and Robin Bornstein, as well as take a second to thank Dr. Stradek and PTO President Nicole Nadell for making time to meet with me today. We got our liaison reports late about who we'd be reporting for, and it was really kind of them to turn around a meeting and their liaison reports to the new liaisons so that I could have them here tonight. So it was wonderful hearing about the things happening at DeFino and also about what is happening with CPAG. For CPAG, CPAG is looking to have another collaborative meeting with SCOPE, Special Services, Board of Ed, Special Education Committee members, and new Board of Ed members. This is the second meeting where the teams can collaboratively discuss upcoming activities and discuss any issues. Additionally, CPAG has extended this meeting to include new Board of Ed members to understand how these three groups function. As someone who was newly elected, I'm really looking forward to that. I kind of found out from the liaison report that we would be included, so I'm excited to go and see how the three groups will be functioning. There are some upcoming webinars and events hosted by outside organizations related to special education for parents and guardians. The information related to these webinars and events can be found on our Facebook page with information related to them. If you aren't a member of the CPAG Facebook page, this is where we provide additional resources for parents in between our regularly scheduled CPAG parent meeting. The next CPAG parent meeting is scheduled virtually for February 27th at 7:30. Please see the CPAG Facebook page closer to the meeting date for the link and agenda for the meeting. Now on to the DeFino Dolphins liaison report. First, I have a school update from DeFino principal, Dr. Stradek. The band and chorus demonstrated the incredible musical talent we have at DeFino. Our band was playing music that is normally earmarked for 7th and 8th grade students, and they played flawlessly. The 5th grade chorus was equally impressive, with several brave students singing solos. Thank you to our band director, Mr. Young, and our music teacher, Miss Krowicki, for putting together a great concert. Looking forward into February, on February 14th, we have our annual first grade Love Bugs music showcase. This music showcase is led by Miss Krowicki, our music teacher, and is one of the highlights of the year. Our first grade families join us in the DeFino gym for this special Valentine's Day performance, which includes a number of Love Bug themed songs. Now an update from DeFino PTO. Again, thank you to PTO President Nicole Nadell for for preparing this great update for me to share. February is an exciting time at Defino. We are kicking off Kindness Month with a special run of our Defino Dolphins Spread Kindness Spirit Wear. Reminder to order yours before the cutoff next week. This will be worn at our Spirit Days and the Character Assembly. February 3rd, Defino Makes a Difference. In its 4th year, we are excited to collect all the ways our Defino staff makes a difference and share them via our certificate program. New for 2025, we will have Defino Kindness Counts program for all students as well. On February 7th, the February School Store Valentine's Day themed Defino Spirit Day and our February PTO meeting. On February 13th, we are excited to welcome Speaker Corey Jones for a school-wide assembly. On February 14th, we celebrate Valentine's Day with a special duck donut treat for your student and capture a cute picture of your student at our Valentine's Day photo booth during lunch, both on sale through PT Board Now. On February 21st, we have our lip sync performance. We are so excited for all of our students and staff performers. Always the best night, tickets on sale soon. On February 28th, our students get to channel their inner Picasso at paint night with Mr. D. Only a few seats are left for this fun event. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palomo. And Ms. Carrero, would you please do Robertsville?
Sure. Thank you to Mr. G for writing this report. We are excited to share all the great things happening at Robertsville. On January 30th, the PTO will host a family game show night. 5th grade hot chocolate social is back to Robertsville on January 24th, coupled with the 5th grade chocolate sale, which will help to offset the cost of 5th grade activities. In February, the PTO and Robertsville community kick off the Glow Run fundraiser, which always benefits our students both in activities and donations from the PTO that directly impact our students and staff. Shout out to PTO for all their work in December, especially decorating the outside of the school in such a festive way, and for the holiday boutique. Our students got a real life lesson in budgeting. Our book clubs have started. Once a month, a group of students and staff volunteers meet to read and discuss grade level appropriate books. Our first meeting was held on January 16th and everyone had fun. We sincerely appreciate our staff volunteers and PTO parents who helped to make this happen. Special thanks to Mrs. Stafflinger and the 5th grade teachers for organizing the spelling bee. 17 students excelled at the classroom level and advanced to the school spelling bee. These students went head-to-head, successfully spelling difficult words such as ogres, amnesia, gargoyles, and algebraic. In the end, it came down to 4 super spellers, and sorry if I pronounce any of these names wrong, but Savia Joshi, Adavan Rajkumar, Aryaman Shrivastava, and Camden Weinshank, bouncing back and forth from championship round to championship round. It was one of the most exciting bees in Robertsville history, but all the spellers displayed poise, confidence, and good sportsmanship beyond their years. After 21 rounds, including 4 championship rounds, Savia confidently spelled the word harlequin to claim the victory. Our teachers worked tirelessly to teach engaging and meaningful lessons. We are proud of all the work our staff and students do daily.
Thank you, Ms. Carrero. That concludes, I believe, the liaison
We
report.
have, I'm sorry, one. We have one more. NJSBA and
I am so sorry.
Memorial. That's okay. I just don't want to leave Memorial out.
I apologize.
That's okay.
No, my apology. I just skipped right over it.
No
Ms.
problem.
Mendez, NJSBA and
Sure.
Memorial.
For NJSBA, so my goal for the year as the liaison is to bring NJSBA updates to board members in a variety of emails and so forth, just for everybody to know. And so my goal is to kind of retrieve some of or extract some of the key updates that they provide us. Sometimes they'll give us things that happen in other districts, in other counties, and so kind of look through that and share those updates with you, but also share some opportunities. And so for the board members, I know we have a level of governance training for each of us that Mr. Caravello has enrolled us in, so that's coming. And I know some of us signed up for some professional development, which I thought was really great, and so we'll keep taking advantage of those. But so that's my goal for NJSBA. For Marlboro Memorial, thank you, Mr. Pacifico. The 6th grade music concert is on Thursday at 7 o'clock. There are the upcoming boys basketball playoffs. I know everybody's really excited. They're underway. The 8th grade Memorial boys versus the Marlboro Middle boys team at 3:30 on Thursday here at Marlboro Memorial. 6th and 7th grade boys will be on Friday at 3:30 at Marlboro Middle School. Difference makers are currently holding student-led meetings to encourage peers to make good decisions and take responsibility for themselves. And for the PTA, thank you to Yvonne and Fiona. The first donut sale for the Broad Street Donuts happened before winter break and sold 550 donuts in one morning. They were delicious and all different flavors and really cool. Also just had a planetarium event that spanned 3 days. It was a 3-day presentation called What's Out There. And those funds, it was paid for by funds from the walkathon. So big shout out and thank you to all the parents that donated. That money then went to the planetarium event that the kids and staff love. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mendez. And again, my apologies. My eyes jumped completely over. I apologize for that. And to Memorial for skipping over them as well. Okay, so I think that concludes now our liaison reports. Any old business? Okay, new business. Any new business?
So, sorry, Ms. Palomo, this will be quick. Just new business. So what I discussed with the driver incentive, do we want to, is that something we want to proceed with this school year? Or do we want to wait to ask for the full board to get back? But if everybody's in consensus now, we wouldn't need.
If we delayed it, I'm just asking the question, if we said we'll wait till the workshop meeting, hypothetically, would that delay your timeline? I'm just curious.
No, I mean, we're gonna start promoting it and advertising it as soon as we get the authorization to do so, and then it would just be a later month. But yeah, I would think the sooner the better if we have the funds earmarked for such a program or an incentive. I just wanted to make sure that we were okay with it before you start seeing advertisements or things posted that are being advertised for that incentive.
So are you just opening up to discussion, or are we just taking a formal vote? What did you need from us?
I mean, just
on
not a
this one?
formal vote, but if there was an overall consensus of that it was okay to proceed with that.
Given the shortage we're facing and the pretty desperate need for you to retain and recruit talent, I'm for it. So
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Mhm.
All right.
I'm
thank
with you too.
And just, I appreciate you raising it, and I think there is, I'm hearing consensus from the board members present today that we need to solve this problem. So I'm very much in favor of it. I just think that the only thing we need to get from you is just the foundation of the program, right? So if we're talking about $2,500 or a $5,000 type of bonus, what are the criteria associated with that and the length of time? Is it going to be 2 years for the driver to remain? And if the referral is from a current employee, how will that be paid out? Will it be paid out 6 months and 6 months, 1 year, or immediately? That's the only thing I would just want to just make sure we have some definition around the program.
Yeah, so it is going to be 2 years. That is something we discussed before even coming to you, that it would have to be a 2-year minimum for the new driver to stay. And the referral would, it would just be paid before the end of the school year. It was over to the existing driver.
And is it capped, Vinny, with so first of all, my answer is sure, I'm all for, right?
Until all
Sure.
positions are filled. So we have 7 open, so we've allotted that the maximum exposure would be, 5,000 per the 7 that are open, so that's 35. And then if you tagged on a referral fee for that, you'll get another 17.5. So we've earmarked about like 52,000 for that, and that would be max exposure. That's if everybody got referred that was new.
So 52,000 could be the max.
Correct.
And then if any of those bus drivers left, right, then they would potentially be responsible for paying back the 5,000 sign-on
Before
bonus.
the 2 years.
Before the 2 years is up. If they left, though, within that year, hypothetically, would you then, and I know they'd have to pay it back, but would you then say that 5,000 sign-on bonus is recurring? So it's every time, not saying you would, but if there were a loss of an employee, then you'd still have that 5,000 coming back, correct?
Correct, yeah. It cannot be a game where someone leaves and then comes back. It would have to be time barred, so you can never have an employee just leave and then a year later come back. You would really have to be a new employee for this district. You would have to be a brand new employee signing on.
Can I just make, on that note, what we usually did was pay over time. Like, you have to give somebody the money up front, and then they leave in a week, and you got to chase your money back. So over the 2-year period, you might say every 3 months you get a piece of that a chunk of that change. You know, the 2 years when that's up, they got the total amount. So it works for them, they're getting money as they're working, extra money, and they have an incentive to stay to the end. You're not chasing somebody that works for 1 week and got whatever money you're gonna
Right.
get.
Yeah, and these are all things that can definitely be added into that when we administer it. Right now, it's just to see if we want to proceed with offering such an incentive, but we can definitely work out the framework of, you know, where there's the best controls possible in place, so we do not get,
Yeah.
you know, one over on almost, if that's what you were gonna say, but.
Yeah, just because if, I'm all for it, but I don't want to see a $52,000 max turn into $120,000. You know, I'm not saying it would, but to Michael's point, I've seen where they've had at banks where you get $250 to sign on, but you have to meet X criteria. They get it up front. They never meet the criteria, and then the company is chasing these people down. So to your point, I would hate to see that happen. Not that I would, but I understand you're going to map that out.
Yeah, and they would have to actually be onboarded properly, how all of our drivers are, to even be considered for that. So that means, you know, having a CDL, that means passing their abstracts, being a certified driver, and they would have to work a certain period of time.
Yes, since we upped the salary for the nurses, the substitute nurses, and it seemed to, and it worked, I think this is a great idea. You know, I'm all for it, and I like your idea, Michael. You know, doing, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I did too. I thought that was a good idea, Michael.
This is great.
That was a good idea.
Yeah. And it'll fall within the time frame of how we want them to stay.
No, that's actually what me and Mr. Gross were talking about, whether or not we need a motion or a vote at this moment.
When you have the details and you finalize everything, that's when we'll vote on it. This is just giving them
Guidance.
to move forward and get those issues answered and put it on.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lomo?
I would like to, I guess, direct this to Mr. Balone. As I'm sure a lot of people have read, the state of New Jersey and our governor has rolled out some new guidance on hiring standards for teachers in the state of New Jersey, including eliminating some assessments in basic skills. I would like to know how the district plans on confronting this new guidance and what your plans are for that with our teachers.
I did see that. So I'll say on the surface, we are not lowering the standards of our teachers, right? So I refuse to do that. My understanding is the elimination of the general content knowledge assessment would be removed for, it's almost like the state feels like they're over-testing our employees. So if someone, I'll just use an example. If someone is, has an English certification and passes that praxis exam, the state's view on taking the general content knowledge, which is a lower level test, is not needed. So that's the spirit of what I believe they're doing. However, notwithstanding that statement, we will not lower our standards for our teachers.
So you will still be expecting any applicants that you consider for employment to have passed the praxis?
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
As I understand it, I mean, and I appreciate you asking that question because I think it's important. It does not change the requirements of college degree and other requirements associated with being able to qualify as an educator in our district and be licensed.
Correct. The spirit is really to remove staff members of taking a lower level assessment. So if they can pass the English praxis, they certainly can pass general content knowledge.
Although, you know, I took the praxis, that's not necessarily true. So that's why I kind of brought this to light, to make sure that our practices for hiring, we're going to remain consistent with what has always been, because I do believe that we have some of the very best teachers in the state, and I'm hoping that we keep that standard of excellence in our district.
We absolutely will.
Thank you. Any other new business? Okay. Next up on the agenda is the executive session. I'm going to move that we move into executive session pursuant to Open Public Meetings Act. We're going to discuss matters of attorney-client privilege, the MTA grievance, and some personal matters, and that we anticipate that the executive session may take up to 90 minutes. But we also don't anticipate as a board that we will return to the public after the executive session, and no further action would be taken. So can I have a second on the moving to? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you.